This is the Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It's Tuesday, March 24th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, the senior host of the program, sitting in for Joe, who's off tonight. He's a good friend of mine. A good friend of the show, it's going to be Dr. Ted Brewer. He's a regular guest of the Power Hour every Tuesday morning and head of healthmasters.com. Ted will be joining us shortly. Meanwhile, we welcome new listeners. We're gaining them all of the time. We want to remind those new to the show that we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Our home base is hagmannandhagmann.com. Now, we're also simulcast by the good graces of the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in live at the hagmannandhagmannreport.com. Different, of course, from hagmannandhagmann.com. At hagmannandhagmann.com, you just click on the link on the right-hand side, and it'll take you directly to the BTR link that will air the show live. We also have our past shows accessed or accessible via hagmannandhagmann.com, and you can subscribe to our RSS feed as well. I want to welcome everyone to the show tonight. We're very proud, very, very proud to mention that portions of tonight's broadcast, this broadcast is sponsored by NatureBox. Now, NatureBox, they ship very tasty, great tasting, guilt-free snacks right to your door with over 100 flavors to choose from, like Asiago cheddar, cheese crisps, pistachio power clusters, Big Island pineapple. Folks, you'll never get bored of snacking again. And try NatureBox for free by going to naturebox.com/CFB-radio. That's naturebox.com/CFB-radio. Alternatively, you can go to hagmannandhagmann.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and there you will find the link to NatureBox. Click on that, and it will say, welcome, Hagmann and Hagmann listeners. It's a great product, and it's a great company, and we're very proud to be associated with them. Now, tonight, as the program unfolds, the second hour, Stan Deyo is going to be our guest. And the third hour, we're going to be talking hopefully more with Ted, as we will be doing in the first hour. Now, until Ted does connect, and I'm waiting for that here. But until that time, I want to mention a couple of things. I mentioned yesterday, folks, that thanks to everyone who supported us and is supporting us, and I want to say, boy, the thank yous are we're so thankful. Beginning next week, and I'm not sure of the exact date, but we are going to take possession of our new studio on the 31st of March, the end of this month, the last day of this month. We'll actually have physical possession on that day. However, it will not be operational probably for a couple of, I would say maybe give us till the first full week in April. And then we will be able to broadcast live from that location. And here's why we did it, just to recap everything. And here's why we pulled the trigger, so to speak, on the new studio. The Internet is changing, and we're looking at a different landscape that's forthcoming, I believe. We have to evolve with the times. This was not a move upward, let's say, to solely for to get new digs and the new environment. No. This is to maintain relevancy, to maintain operational functionality, I suppose, in this changing landscape, and to be able to make the switch to various other venues at a moment's notice, but hopefully at a more casual rate, shall I say. Do it on our own time and have that ability to, we'll say, reach out and to be able to change venues pretty much right away. But we'd like to plan for it. So that's what we're doing. This gives us additional capabilities we don't have right now. And ultimately, it'll expand our reach. And with that, I do hope that, and I do pray, that we will be able to bring more people to the truth, more people to God, and that's our major purpose in life. But to disseminate the truth, to disseminate information, to make sense of the headlines of today in a much better, much more effective fashion than we're doing right now. So I just want to say thank you for that. And then that'll be next week. You will not see any interruption in our programming. It'll be smooth, a very smooth transition, although you might notice an increase, hopefully you'll notice an increase in content, an increase in, little changes. And I think that'll be pretty cool. I think it'll work out very well. Now, so tonight, Stan Deyo, hour number 2. Still waiting on Ted, of course, to connect. As soon as he does, we'll bring him on. And then, I want to mention as well, tomorrow night, Pastor David Langford and Steve Quayle. That's Pastor David Langford and Steve Quayle tomorrow night on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And next Monday night, we've got a very special treat for you as well. Pastor and author Billy Crone. I don't know whether you've ever heard of him. We had the opportunity to interview him in Orlando. He's the author of an upcoming book and a DVD series titled The Final Countdown. Actually, when I say DVD series, I think he's up to number 12, perhaps, parts 1 and 2. It's a very extensive DVD series that talks about the times in which we live, and compared to biblical prophecy, or through the prism of biblical prophecy. So it's going to be it's a fabulous DVD series, and he is a wealth of information. And you talk about being right on the cutting edge of the New World Order, that type of thing. He knows. His knowledge is incredible. Now, tonight, I will be on Coast to Coast AM tonight with George Norrie. I'm working it out right now with the producer. I'm not sure if it's just going to be in the news segment for the first few minutes, or if it's going to be for the first hour. So I'm not exactly certain, but we'll see about that. And that's going to be about the current state of the terrorist training compounds in the United States, the Muslim training compounds in the United States. And while I'm on that subject, we delivered a presentation at the Orlando Prophecy Summit on that topic. And I want to mention this because I do believe, and I know that Steve Quayle and I had talked about this both privately and publicly, and this was the topic of a couple of reports. I did some actual covert physical surveillance of locations throughout Western New York, New York City, in other locations of these terrorist training compounds. And I've talked about this before in the program. And some say, well, that's old news. Well, not really. The initial investigation that I conducted with a couple of different partners and a couple of different agencies, the initial thrust of that was back in 2004 through 2008 or 7, really, kind of falling into 2008, early part of that year. And then again in 2012 through the beginning of last year. Now, there's a reason why I didn't provide a lot of information about the more recent investigation, and that's because I consider it an active federal law enforcement investigation. However, it's interesting that, and I mentioned this at the Orlando Prophecy Summit, back in 2008, really 2005 and 6, when we conducted the surveillance of these training compounds, specifically Jamaat al-Fukra, which is Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jilani's organization, the Muslims of the Americas. Now, the Christian Action Network has wrote extensively on this, and you've seen this perhaps on some Fox TV specials, Fox Channel 5 out in New York City. They attempted entry into Islamburg back in, I think it was 2005. I don't have my notes in front of me. This is all from memory. But at the conclusion of our covert physical surveillance, we submitted a report to the Department of Justice back in 2005, or 2006, I believe it was. And what I remember about that is we amassed a lot of information from our physical surveillance, covert surveillance, took a lot of videotape, numerous images, pictures, and a lot of statements from nearby residents who witnessed paramilitary-type training activity in the Catskill Mountains of New York State. And I was there. I saw and I photographed the training grounds we made entry to at the perimeter of this very large acreage of the compound in Islamberg, and we photographed things, including, and this did appear on Fox 5, not in New York City, including a school bus, an elementary school bus, a typical yellow school bus, riddled, folks, riddled with bullet holes. And we were told, in fact, by an informant, a confidential informant at the time, that the bus was actually a practice bus, a practice vehicle, prop, if you will, for taking over kidnapping children. You heard me right. I mean, now if that doesn't frighten you or concern you, man, I don't know what will. And of course, that picture was the pictures we took, and the pictures that Fox 5 took did appear on the Fox News Channel's report. But it's interesting because the proximity of this compound in Hancock, New York, Islamberg, as it is known, was well known to the authorities, very well known. The paramilitary training, the federal authorities had received many reports of paramilitary training. In fact, the nearby residents, and this is a pretty isolated area, but the nearby residents actually got tired. They were fatigued from calling the police and reporting the activities. Nothing was being done. And in fact, some residents had reported being threatened by the residents of this village, this encampment, for being nosy, shall we say. Well, as it turned out, when it was all said and done, at least when we closed our covert aspect of our physical surveillance of the encampment, we wrote up a pretty lengthy, I think it was like a 30-some page report and submitted it to the FBI. And we were directed, actually, where to submit this report. Okay, now we did this, along with the video evidence and what have you. Well, through a meeting with the FBI, they took our original tapes, photographs, everything, basically confiscated them. Now, it was a mutual situation. At the time, I believed that we were actually working together, and of course, I was pretty naive in doing so. Never got the originals back. I was able to save or retain some of the more tame images that I took. But what really got me, really hit me pretty hard, and made me realize that everything is not what it seems, is that report was submitted to the FBI in 2006. Within 24 hours, 36 hours, I'll just say 36 hours. Within 36 hours, the head of the Muslims of the Americas, the head of Jamaat al-Fukra, or the Community of the Impoverished, as it's translated, a resident of Lahore, Pakistan, Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jilani, who Daniel Pearl was on his way to interview, allegedly, when he was kidnapped. Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter in Pakistan. Of course, he was kidnapped and beheaded, but he was supposedly on his way to interview Jilani. And the FBI on the ground in Pakistan said, well, Jilani had nothing to do with the kidnapping. And I looked at that and I thought, it's how convenient is that? But the bottom line here is this: within 36 hours of our submission of that information to the FBI, Jelani had in his possession every page of my report that I submitted as a confidential investigative work product. In other words, that just basically tipped him off. And what the result was from that was a religious statement or a fatwa that identified me because my name was on the report. So even to this day, on the Muslims of the Americas website, you can visit that website and you can see the religious statement against me by Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jelani. And the only thing I got out of it was a visit by the FBI some weeks later, and they said, we did kind of consider things. You might want to increase your security a tad. Nice, right? And as I looked, and I said, "You're gonna help me?" And no, that's you're on your own. You're gonna have to get private security. So anyway, and it was only I think it was shortly thereafter is when we and this could be very coincidental, I don't know, but we locked the door using one of those key locks on our vehicle as we exited our vehicle, and heard this muffled explosion. Looked over and saw this cloud of smoke going in the air, and there went our car, and it burned hot and wide, and was completely destroyed. And bottom line was they said, boy, we don't know what happened, but it was certainly unusual. Cars just don't do that. Anyway, the evidence was destroyed. Having said that, I do believe we have Mr. Ted Brewer from healthmasters.com on with us, sitting in for Joe. Ted, are you there?
I'm here. I've been listening to your show the whole time. I don't know where your buttons were at. You were not pushing buttons. I would never let you. I've never come on your show late.
Oh, man, they're okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm looking right at it. I think I brought someone else on. Sorry about that. Well, Ted, it's great to have you.
Are you there,
my
Doug?
friend. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Well, it's good to be here with you.
Yeah, man.
Great. You hear me okay?
I hear you fine. Yeah. I got to ask you this because I'm sitting up here. It's 22 degrees as we speak. 22 degrees, not in the studio, outside the studio. You got to tell me, what's the temperature outside? Tease me.
80. Well, it was 85 today. Clear blue skies, light sea breeze, no chemtrails. It was nice.
Wow. All right. Well, you're the man. See, you know how to pick locations.
It was really, really nice. And now well, you were 20 minutes from my house, and I couldn't get you to come by. But, yeah, we like it down here. I mean, we're kind of in a huge metropolitan area with Florida, but we live in a rural town, about 10,000 people. It's been about 10,000 people my whole life. And I lived here for my entire life, except for the 10 years I spent at Florida State University. So I've had a good time down here. But we got a lot of news stories to cover with you tonight. I want to talk about more cancer stuff. I want to talk about more diabetes stuff. I want to talk about what happens when your hair starts turning gray and starts getting thin and what you can do about that. I want to go more into the magnesium that Sharon talked about last week. Plus, I've got a couple of news stories that I covered this morning on the Power Hours, because I was hosting that show for 3 hours this morning, and I have a couple of news stories that I want to cover with you on that we covered this morning that I thought were really interesting, like, the United States increasing the aid to the Afghanistan military by like $4 billion a year so they can continue to cover their poppy fields.
Exactly. Well, let's get into
why they're doing it, you know that.
Oh, yeah. And
nutrition you want to do nutrition, what do you want to do? You want to do nutrition or news first?
Well,
I don't care.
You know what? You pick, Ted. And I got to thank you so much. You 3 hours this morning on the Power Hour, and folks, every Tuesday, right? Ted, every Tuesday on the Power Hour?
It was every Tuesday. In fact, I put your name. I wanted you guys. I'm trying to get you guys back on again for next week before I go out of town for a few weeks. But I'm not sure what they've got scheduled for me. I think they're changing me to next Monday next week, and so it's a blast. Joyce is. I'm believing God she's going to be totally healed, and we prayed for her the last time I was on the show, so I'm just going to continue to believe that. But we got a lot of great stuff to cover about tonight. I want to talk about some of this news that's coming out and some of the things that But I was listening for the last 20 minutes to what you were talking about with your car burning and these Muslim terrorist groups and shooting up school buses. Man, that's some pretty serious stuff, Doug.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because on the website of the Muslims of the Americas, it's interesting because right after we submitted our report to the FBI, they posted photographs of FBI agents from Binghamton and also from New York City having lunch, breaking bread with the people at that encampment and praising their work with the young people.
And telling you to increase your security, but you were on your own. That just sounds like the government, doesn't it?
It does.
But let me read you this article real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is on turmeric. We talked about it before. Remember, turmeric is one of the products that you're using to help maintain your blood sugar, and it also does a really good job. And this article just came out by Sadra G, and it's an article that's been done from a research study that was done out of a major research journal, and it says that turmeric's smart kill properties put chemotherapy and radiation to shame in the treatment of cancer. It says that the groundbreaking new study published in the Journal of the Anti-Cancer Research reveals that one of the world's most extensively researched and promising natural compounds for cancer treatment, the primary polyphenol in the ancient spice turmeric, also known as curcumin, has the ability to selectively target cancer stem cells, which are the root, literally the root of the cancer malignancy, while having little or no toxicity on normal cells, which are essential for tissue regeneration and longevity. I mean, think about what I just said. They're now coming out, and these research journals are starting to test natural herbs and spices and finding that they're better at treating cancer disease, which is what it is, cancer is a disease, than radiation and chemotherapy. You know, unbelievable. I mean, think about what they're saying. I mean, that's pretty doggone stout.
Absolutely. Now, so just normal, supplementation with turmeric will do this. I mean, is that what
you have to use it. Well, the stuff that you use is a concentrated form. It has to be real concentrated. Otherwise, you got to take too much of it. And I take it every day. You know what it also does is it completely. I'm not just saying this. And with everybody that we've tested it on at the office who've got really bad allergies, especially in the spring now with all this pollen out, especially in Florida, it completely gets rid of their allergies in a couple of days. You got to take a lot of it. You got like 6 of them twice a day. But it just knocks out the allergies. And if it doesn't knock them out completely, it makes them bearable so your head's not running and your nose isn't running. You don't have these wretched headaches the whole time, and you're not tired and fatigued. So that's really, I wanted to share that with everybody too. Plus, last week, Sharon, it was so funny. She came on for about 5 minutes and talked about her thing with spinal stenosis. You can't believe how many people have called up about that silly stuff that she talked about last week, which isn't really silly, but about a magnesium deficiency. And how so many people had the exact same symptoms with the swollen fingers and the spinal stenosis, and they're ordering this protocol that we designed for Sharon, and I guarantee you they're going to have great results. But I wanted to pull up a couple more articles on magnesium if I can real quick, Doug, and talk about that before we go into the news. And we're going to talk about the news. We're going to talk about Obama and all that mess in a few minutes. But I like doing this nutrition stuff with you guys because what I was trained in, and that's my main field. And if I can help people, it makes everything that I do worthwhile. If that makes any sense.
Sure it does.
It really does. I mean, I remember years ago I used to do counseling when I was still state licensed. What happened with my license actually lapsed on me back about 20 years ago, and I was on the seminar circuit and I was gone all the time, and we moved from one house to the other. And the state of Florida, I kept putting in these change of addresses for my license to be sent to. Finally, after the second year, I sent them up. I sent it to them like 3 times. I wrote them a letter and everything. And they said, they finally changed the address, and they said, well, your license has been lapsed for longer than a year now. We're not going to give it back to you without you going back to college again. And I said, guys, I've worked with thousands of patients as a nutritionist, state licensed here in Florida. You want me to go back to college again so you can get recertified? And said, yeah, and then you're going to have to sit underneath another doctor for like X amount of hundreds of hours in order to learn how to do what you're doing all over again. And I said, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. But what I used to do, the reason I say that, because by that time I was on the seminar circuit with Bush and the boys, and I was so busy. I mean, I was doing very little counseling anyhow, and I certainly didn't have time to go back to college and take additional classes on how many servings there were in a can of peas, And so what was interesting is I'd always do these counseling sessions before my license was lapsed, and I remember, it was pretty expensive because people were calling me from all over the world. But what I did, though, probably 50 to 60% of the time, people would call me up about stuff, Doug, that I didn't know how to fix, or I wasn't sure about it, or it wasn't in my field of nutrition. It was some crazy thing, right? And I'd always say to them, look, there's no charge. I'm not going to charge you. Let me tell you what I suggest that you do from a health standpoint. But I can't directly talk about your condition because I really don't know what to do about this because I've never really heard of this strange disease before. And so it was always so funny to me. I had so many people send me letters afterwards and send me gifts and everything else, say, you're the first person that we've ever spoke to that we brought in as a professional that told us no charge. See, and that's one of the mantras that I've lived my life by. Well, because I don't do that. If I can't help somebody, I'm just going to say I don't know. I can't help you, or I don't know. Now we do free counseling. If people call me up and I'm at the office, I don't mind talking to them, especially with your listeners because they're always so educated and so nice. But the crazy thing about this is I still tell them the same thing. If I can't help them, I'm going to say I don't know. But stuff like high blood pressure, mild to moderate forms of depression, gray hair, burning body fat, type 2 diabetes, stabilizing blood sugars, all that kind of stuff. From a dietary standpoint, those are really, really easy to take care of. And one of the biggest things that we found now are the magnesium deficiencies and how prevalent this is in the Western society. Now, what's interesting about this, let me give you some statistics on this. Most doctors and laboratories don't even include magnesium status in routine blood tests. Here's why. Most of the doctors know that most patients don't know. The reason that's for it's very difficult to detect the magnesium in the right levels in the blood. Thus, most doctors don't know when their patients are deficient in magnesium, even though studies show that the majority, about 80% of Americans, are deficient in magnesium. Consider Dr. Norman Shaley's statements. Every known illness is associated with a magnesium deficiency. Isn't that interesting? And that magnesium is the most critical mineral required for the electrical stability of every cell in the body. A magnesium deficiency may be responsible for more diseases than any other nutrient. The truth, he states, exposing a gaping hole in modern medicine explains a good deal about iatrogenic death, which is doctor-induced disease, because they give you drugs to treat symptoms that are from magnesium deficiencies and you die from the drugs. Because magnesium deficiency is largely overlooked, millions of Americans suffer needlessly or are having their symptoms treated with expensive drugs when they could be cured with magnesium supplementation. And let me give you some of these side effects of this. Symptoms of magnesium deficiency can be subtle, as most magnesium is stored in the tissues and the legs. So you end up with leg cramps, you end up with foot pain, muscle twitches could be the first sign. Other early signs of deficiency includes appetite loss, vomiting, fatigue, extreme fatigue, weakness. A magnesium deficiency worsens numbness, tingling, seizures, personality changes, heart arrhythmia, and coronary spasms can occur. A full outline of magnesium deficiency was beautifully presented in a recent article of Dr. Sidney Baker. He said magnesium deficiency can affect virtually every organ in the system in the body. With regard to skeletal muscle, one of the most experiences are muscle cramps, muscle tension, muscle soreness, including backaches, neck pain, tension. It just goes on and on and on. PMS, hyperactivity, restlessness, panic attacks, peripheral nervous system problems, tingling, zip, zap, zings, and the vibratory sensations. It goes on and on and on. So what I recommend that people do is that Sharon still has her magnesium protocol on the front page of healthmasters.com. Go over there and take a look at it. Sharon was suffering with really bad spinal stenosis. Her fingers were swollen. She couldn't even close her fist. That's completely gone. She's like a doggone cyborg again. Man, she wants to work all the time down at the office. And I don't even see my wife anymore because she's always running around the office. And because she feels so good and she has so much energy. But I wanted to cover that in a little bit more detail because she really didn't go into the clinical aspects. But over 300 chemical reactions of the body are specifically designed for magnesium. And it's without enough magnesium in your body, it simply won't work. Now, here's the problem. Magnesium, when you take it orally, it acts more like a laxative. It's a heavy metal. It's a heavy mineral, so it's very heavy. It's very difficult for the body to absorb it with its laxative effect. So the best way to do it is magnesium chloride. You can apply it topically. We've got shampoo with it. We've got soap with it. We've got deodorant with it. And when you use deodorant with it, it doesn't give you the aluminum chlorhydrate. It is the only natural deodorant that I've ever used that works. Most natural deodorants smell like perfume. They're awful, and they don't work at all. And so I quit using any of it. So if Sharon says, you've got to use deodorant when you work out in the sun and blah, blah, blah. Now I found one that works because it actually takes care of body odor, and it doesn't do anything bad to your body, and it actually helps you to absorb magnesium under the arms, which is a very vital area to absorb stuff. Because remember this, Doug, you could take a clove of garlic, and you can cut it in half, and you can rub it on the bottom of your foot. And about 30 minutes later, you're going to taste that in your mouth. That's how transdermal absorption works. Oh, yeah, try it. You get a fresh clove of garlic, cut it in half, put it and rub it all on the bottom of your feet, and you'll taste it in your mouth in half an hour. And that's what that magnesium does. It absorbs through your feet, absorbs all through your different body's pores, and it feeds the cells. And I tell you what, Sharon Brower, my wife, has made a believer out of me with magnesium, and it's been a pretty interesting experience because I know that it's a situation where she just is she's a different person. Just absolutely a different person, and so I love it. I love it being married to Miss 20-year-old again. I mean, it's crazy. But let's go ahead and let's talk about another topic here real quick. And I apologize for going so quick on this, but I had so many different things that I want to cover with you. And of course, we can catch it on the third hour too.
Sure.
And by the way, I had a really good guest on. I had a good guest today on the Power Hour, and he said he'd come on y'all's show with you. He's a former spy.
Right, I saw that.
His name. Yeah, his name is Robert David Steele, and he was a really good interview. He was he's fully awake. He's actually put a whole protocol together to try to help change the election. So I want you guys to think about having him on. He was really, really good. He was on Alex's show a few weeks ago, and I'd heard the interview, And I thought, well, shoot, I can give him more time than that, and I can promote his website and see what he's up to. So it was a very interesting show today, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I want you guys to check him out too if you can.
Okay.
Let's see. Here's another one that I pulled up. Garlic. A new study just been released. It says that garlic has been shown now to cure 100% of warts and 80% of corns. It said in the first study of its kind, this common herb was found to have remarkable healing result for common warts and corns. A clinical study published in the International Journal of Dermatology titled The Healing Effect of Garlic Extract on Warts and Corns reveals the amazing healing properties of garlic extract being put directly on common warts and corns and healing them. Warts are caused by the human virus, HPV, and corns by suppression or friction, and they are some of the most common conditions found in dermatological studies today. In the new study, peeled garlic was processed to produce either a water or fat-based extract. A total of 28 patients with 2 to 96 warts. I can't even believe you have 96 warts.
Wow.
9 patients with 1 to 2 corns in a control group. And basically what happened is this stuff just worked. It cured 100% of the warts. So I thought you guys would get a kick out of that one, too. And again, people go to our website, healthmasters.com, but we don't sell fresh garlic. You can get that at your grocery store. Now, here's another interesting, Doug, on health of your hair and how it reflects our health. Now, this is a good one. If your hair becomes too dry and thin, there's some natural things that you can do for that, including borage oil. You can also take biochemical plasma salts and also silica plasma salts along with cod liver oil. That works really, really well. And if you start getting those little small places where you start having like dandruff buildup and like eczema and psoriasis, the same thing will work for that. The borage oil and the bioplasma tissue salts and also the silica tissue salts will take care of that condition in about 6 weeks if you take them every single day faithfully. And same thing, if you're shedding a lot of hair, you can also have a B12 deficiency along with different minerals. And if you're turning gray, people are always asking me, they said, are you coloring your hair? No, I don't color my hair, and yes, it's this color. It's natural. But I take zinc every day. I take between 60 and 100 milligrams of zinc a day. And I also take activated methylated B vitamins, and that helps to keep your hair from turning gray. So I thought that was pretty cool, too. And one more thing I want to talk about on the nutrition side here, then we can do all kinds of stuff with this. This is another article just came out, and it says that the name of the article is called Stoned to Death, Calcium Supplements Proven to Kill Again. Now, I've told your audience and your listeners many times, and I have the same on the Power Hour, if you're a man, you should never, ever take calcium supplements, period. And with women, if they're going to take them, they should only take the ones that are chelated. But just basically eating rock doesn't work. It goes into your soft tissue, including your arteries, Doug, and it causes hardening of the arteries. And that's why doctors have actually cut their gloves while doing bypass surgery, because the arteries have become so brittle from calcium buildup that the doctors don't even know what to do, because their arteries get sliced open right in the middle of surgery. They got to change out their gloves because they're like razor blades when they go into the arteries, because they're so sharp and so brittle. That's why it's called hardening of the arteries. Your body's literally, your soft tissue's turning to stone, including the arteries, which cuts back on the blood flow, and that's one of the atherosclerotic problems with the calcium buildup, and that's one of the primary causes of heart attacks. That's why I always tell folks, don't drink well water. And don't drink tap water. You need to be drinking distilled water, which has all of those inorganic calciums taken out or reverse osmosis. And distillers are the easiest thing to use. I mean, I think you've got one. And,
yes, sir.
And so what happens is when you plug it in and you use it, it makes delicious tasting water. And it takes about 2 or 3 hours to make a gallon. But if you put it together at night and just do it from your tap water, it makes great tasting water. And again, distillers are also available at the healthmasters.com website.
I highly recommend distillers. You don't think, and I never thought that the water had any taste, or there was. You never associate necessarily taste with water unless it's bad water, bad taste, or you could taste chlorine or whatever. But I've got to tell you, what a difference the distiller makes with the taste of a water. And tell me if I'm just insane about this, but the water almost has a different feel to it.
No, it's soft. It's soft. No, see, yeah. See what happens. Hard water doesn't like to soap up. That's why they use things to bind the salts. They use salts to bind up the metals in the water, and they like Culligan and those other places because they want to make the water soft again. And so when I sent you that distiller, because I was concerned about your heart, I wanted you to know that it would actually end up taking the calcium out of the water, and it actually helps to prevent atherosclerotic plaquing. Plus, it makes the water taste so much better. Plus, remember, chlorine and fluorine are both halogens. They're in the same category in this periodic table with bromine and chlorine, fluorine, bromine, and iodine. And what happens is when you ingest chlorine and fluoride in the water, your body thinks it's iodine, and it absorbs it into the thyroid gland. And when it does that, it causes the thyroid gland to go either hypo or hyper. And so a lot of times people have weight gain problems and health problems and tremendous energy problems because they've ingested so much fluorine and chlorine in their water that it's completely impaired their thyroid gland, which is a master gland. It has to be there. And the entire endocrine system is affected by that. Your glandular system is affected by that. That's why it's critical. And the reason we chose that particular brand of distillers that you've got is that it doesn't, when the water condenses and it goes into the boil tank and it goes into the condensing coils, what it does, it goes through a stainless steel coil. A lot of the cheaper model distillers use what's called aluminum condensing coils, and so you pick all that aluminum back up in the water. You actually contaminate your own water with aluminum when you do that, and that'll increase your risks of Alzheimer's disease. So the stainless steel boil tank and the stainless steel condensing coils and a BPA-free container, that's the key things that you have to get on the distiller. And then there's a big one. There's a big distiller on the website that I want to have at the house. That'll actually pump. That has a little pump to it. It'll pump through food-grade tubing. It'll take water all the way to your kitchen sink for a faucet and also to your refrigerator, to the ice maker. So that's what we have here at the house. And I tell you what, I've had that thing for 20 years, I guess, and I've never had a problem with it. And it makes the best-tasting water. And if you clean it out, Doug, I have to send you a picture one time. After about 6 months with my well water that I have, you literally have to chip away on the side of the holding tank to get the bulk of the calcium out. And that's the stuff that would be going into your body, into your soft tissues, and into your arteries. I mean, you literally will get 2 or 3 pounds of concrete salts, calcium carbonate out of that distill tank when you clean it out. And just think, that's the same water that you would have drunk with all of that in it, and your body couldn't utilize it, but yet your body would have stored it in the soft tissue, and you would have had all these different types of calcium deposits in your arteries. That's why it's critical that you do not drink tap water or well water or fluoride or chlorine. It's just, you can't do it, Doug. It's just unhealthy.
Is there a difference between if you go in the grocery store and buy a gallon of distilled water, and I'm not sure, frankly, I'm not sure. How do you know if it's distilled anyway? But is there a difference between going in the grocery store buying a gallon of distilled water or distilling it yourself?
Oh yeah, you can't compare the two. Number one, when you especially with the big unit that we have, everything stays in stainless steel, and so what happens is it holds like 12 gallons, and so it's good for emergencies too. And what we have is we have a bunch of those old apple juice jugs. We have those gallon jugs. You used to buy them for a couple bucks a piece, only like $10 a piece for a silly jug, just because they're coming out of China and they want to make sure they get us everywhere they can. And so we have like 20 of these jugs. So what we do is we fill 20 jugs up in glass, and so it's going from stainless steel to glass. What happens is distilled water is looking for electrons. This is about 6.5 pH. It's slightly on the acidic side. If you're concerned about that, don't be, because you can put some bioplasma tissue salts in there and completely stop that, or you can put a pinch of table salt in there and stop the acidity of it. But even when you drink it with food, it doesn't make any difference anyhow, because it's going to be pH neutral regardless, because it's going to be in your stomach before with the food, so it doesn't make any difference. Plus, if you're trying to flush salts out of your system, it does great for that, especially if you've got diabetes or adult onset diabetes or juvenile diabetes, and you're trying to get those insulin salts back out of your system. Distilled is one of the best to use for that. But yes, it makes a huge difference, Doug, because when you buy distilled water in a grocery store, it's in plastic. And when it's in plastic, what happens is, because it's looking for those electrons, it starts to dissolve the plastic. That's why you got to make sure that stuff's BPA free. Those plastic containers, when you're using, got to be real hard plastic and BPA free, because if they stay in that container for 3 or 4 or 5 months or a year on a grocery store shelf or in transit or in a warehouse, that water is going to taste absolutely awful. And before you do that, when you go to the grocery store, what you need to do, before you buy distilled water in a jug, get reverse osmosis water, bring your own jugs, and usually they have a machine at the grocery store, and you can buy BPA-free jugs, and you can fill it up yourself. Now, we used to do that too, but that's a big headache. It's about 39 to 59 cents a gallon to do it that way, but you got to drive to the store, take your 20 jugs with you. Let me tell you, after about 4 months of that, I said, I'm done. I'm buying a distiller. This is too big of a headache. But that's the difference now with the distillation. That's why distillation is so important, that you do it yourself and that you do not buy distilled water and drink it from a store. It's better to use the reverse osmosis at the store, because that still takes the minerals out, and you don't get the calcium and stuff in the RO water, providing that the RO filter isn't contaminated. That's the biggest problem that I have with RO water. Plus, because one time I was at a store, I think it was up in Indiana, and we were filling up our jugs in the motorhome. We were on a big book tour, and I remember we ended up getting these water things, and something just wasn't right about the water. And I ended up drinking a glass of water. Oh, God, I got sick. Sharon got sick. We all got sick. So we had to pour out like 20 gallons of water, and we had to sterilize the jugs with bleach because the RO filter had gone bad on the machine. That's only happened to me one time, though, and I tell you, that was all it needed to happen. Now I'm very, very careful when to make sure these machines are sanitary, make sure they're cleaned right.
I gotcha. All right. Wow. Well, yeah, I'm a big proponent of the distillers. I got to tell you, folks, sitting in for Joe is Dr. Ted Broer, healthmasters.com. You got to visit his website. If you have diabetes, check out the Hagmann diabetes protocol. If you have got the least bit of spinal stenosis or arthritis, the magnesium pack, you've got to. And man, I'll tell you, I cannot say this guy really. I can't make any medical claims, but I can. He saved my life. I mean, he did really. My numbers were just out of control with respect to blood sugar. I couldn't even get it regulated by medicine. I mean, I was really, and Ted, I called you. I was hours away from having to go on injectable insulin, and you said, no, you got to do this, and this, and. Hey, I got to tell you, man, I'm like a new man. So, folks, this is serious business. It really is, and he's got my 100% endorsement, stamp of approval, and this works. That's most important. It works. So, well, go ahead, sir. Continue.
Well, let's go. But the calcium is very, very important that you don't. I mean, you ask yourself a question: why do the human beings and Americans consistently and obsessively consume rock, bone, and shell calcium when your body can't even use it? I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And it's been shown repeatedly to build up in the tissue and to harden the body out. In fact, Dr. Paul Bragg had written a book years ago, and it was called The Terrible Truth About Water, I believe the name of it was. This is like 40 years ago, and I'm dating myself now. And he talks about how all these people with all these different types of heart problems and all these problems of calcium buildup, like Sharon had with stenosis, a lot of that can be directly contributed to calcium supplementation. And see, your best way to get calcium is to do like raw certified cow's milk or goat's milk. It's a whole lot healthier for you, and it doesn't cause all of these horrible side effects. And it just is what it is. It's just so much easier. All right, let's go back to this next. We got a we already did the one on hair, so we're done with that. We're done with the magnesium. Oh, I want to talk about this tonight too, since we'll do the nutrition stuff some more later on. But let's go back to these news stories. I picked up a few news stories this morning. Ted Cruz's wife is a vice president, or was a vice president until yesterday at Goldman Sachs. Were you aware of that?
Yep. Yes, I am. Yep. She quit. She quit to go on the campaign trail. No, we haven't said anything. In fact, No, they haven't talked about it yet.
But, I mean, I'm just going to make a statement. Goldman Sachs is the belly of the beast. Are you kidding me? And then her and George Bush, she was working on Bush's campaign along with Cruz, and they met each other. She was suffering with severe depression. You have to wonder why Bushes go to Bohemian Grove. I'm sure she probably didn't know about that. And now we got Ted Cruz. All of a sudden, his wife is the vice president at Goldman Sachs, and now suddenly, he wants to be president. She's quitting to go on the campaign trail with him. I mean, and now he won't even disclose her salary, which I guess doesn't matter anymore because now she just quit. But she's a vice president, or was a vice president until yesterday, of Goldman Sachs in their investment division. And can you remember last week we talked? You remember the Rothschild banking cartel owns Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs runs the United States and pretty much runs the world. And the sad part about it is a lot of these presidents, these puppet dictators that are being put in all over Europe, including in Greece, before this last election, they're these guys that Goldman Sachs are putting in. Doug, you know that.
Oh yeah.
And the sad part about it is this. And this lady now thinks that it's okay. I mean, just when you think, because I was thinking, okay, Ted Cruz sounds good. He wants to get rid of the IRS. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. But then Judge Napolitano said it so succinctly the other day. He said he's in the same venue, the same vein as Woodrow Wilson, where he wants to go out and continue to carry on this going out and attacking these countries all the time and being the Rothschild cartel lapdog, which is what we've turned into. And so it's unbelievable that nobody knew the fact that this woman was working as a vice president for Goldman Sachs in their investment division.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. But no one should be surprised about this. However, the conservative, I was reading the conservative boards, and they're saying, well, anybody is better than Obama, but but Ted, I mean, can't we do better than this? Plus, his eligibility himself, constitutional eligibility himself, should be
Canadian.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing. Remember the old Who, that song they did, Revolution back in the 60s or early 70s. It says, "Meet the old boss, same as the new boss." If we get Jeb Bush or Ted Cruz in there and another one of these government inside incumbent kind of guys, why do we possibly think it's going to be any different with these guys than it's going to be with Obama? I mean, Bush is the same as Obama. Obama's the same as Clinton. Clinton's the same as George W. And also with the old president, the old Bush. The only person that had any kind of salt was Reagan, and that was until he got shot after about the first month, and then Bush took over the White House for 12 years. And the problem, it was so funny yesterday, Doug. I was sitting in the doctor's office. My stomach was a little bit upset. I thought, you know what? I'm going to be I don't want to get. I just had a cold a few weeks ago. I don't want to deal with that again. So I went and get a vitamin C IV. And I went in. I was sitting in this vitamin. There was Dr. Harold and Todd Robinson in Lakeland, Florida. If you guys are ever in the area, and I had a vitamin. I was getting a vitamin C IV. They were putting 50,000 milligrams of vitamin C directly into my bloodstream through an IV bag. Right. It takes about an hour and a half to do that. And it just really energizes you and knocks out anything if you're getting kind of cold or virus or whatever. And what was funny is this lady walks in, and she'd left a taxi out front, and she was getting rapid chelation to help clean out her arteries. And she comes in, and she starts talking. It's a small room, like 18 by 18. And she's talking real loud, and so I'm sitting there trying to take a nap, and I've got my sunglasses on because the lights are so bright. And finally I pulled my glasses off with my hand that was free, and I started talking to her because she was making all these comments, political comments, and she was so naive. And so I started asking her questions, about what's going on with this takeover of Texas and and these 4 states. Now they've added Florida to it too, and nobody knew anything about it. And then I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden there's a pilot sitting beside me, and he was asleep. His name is Dave, and he woke up, and I was talking, and finally he said, and I told him that I do the Power Hour on Tuesdays. And he said, "Oh, wow, I'd like to hear you." So we started talking. Then he said to me, he said something very succinct, and I didn't expect this from anybody. I'll be honest with you. He goes, "The United States was subject to a coup in 1963 with the assassination of John F. Kennedy and the takeover of the government by the CIA and the mafia." And he goes, "That's when we lost our country. It was 1963. The guy's like 61 years old. He's a pilot. Apparently, flies for one of the major airlines. And and you think about that for a second. He's right. Ever since 1963, we had Lyndon Johnson, who we know was neck deep in the Kennedy assassination. We can watch that video, 9/11 or JFK to 9/11. Yep. It's a rich man's trick, which I promoted on your show multiple times. And you could see in connection with Lyndon Johnson in that mess. Then Lyndon Johnson led right into Nixon, who was a poster boy for corruption, bless his heart. And of course, he makes Obama look tame, and that led right to Jimmy Carter, which was a Ford. The Ford that was a joke, and then Ford went right directly into Jimmy Carter. That was like he was up there with Carter was awful, but Carter had a good heart. I'll give him that. He was just naive. He really was naive. And then of course that went to Reagan. And Reagan, I think if Reagan had been given a chance, I really think Reagan could have made some changes because he was really trying to get rid of a lot of stuff like he did in California, but they put a big quash on him. And then, of course, we ended up with Clinton, and that would end up giving us, all of these things with Waco and Ruby Ridge and Branch Davidians and all this other kind of mess. And then, of course, we had Oklahoma bombing, that false flag. And then it went right to George W. And then that whole mess with him with 9/11, and we all know was an inside some kind of. We don't know what happened with that. We don't know who actually did it, but we know the government story wasn't accurate. And then it just goes. It's everything. But he was right when I thought about it. Eisenhower even warned us about the military-industrial complex, tried to warn us. And then Kennedy was there, and all of a sudden it was like the country lost its innocence in the '60s. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's interesting to me. Case closed. I think Posner. What is it by Gerald Posner? postulating that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone assassin. And I look at the blowback against the so-called fringe conspiracy details of the Kennedy assassination. But few people bring out what the House Select Committee on Assassinations from the mid-70s talk about. And they concluded, if you read the transcripts, they concluded that in fact, there was a conspiracy, and they doubted the, and you have to read between the lines because it was carefully crafted, but they doubted the participation of Lee Harvey Oswald in the assassination itself, other than being in the right place or at the wrong place at the wrong time on purpose, but put there by his handler. So, it points directly to the CIA.
Well, he was on the CIA payroll for years before that. You know that. I mean, gosh,
Sure.
He was a military boy. He was a Marine.
Yeah.
That whole thing was a lie. That whole investigation was a lie, and they proved they could kill the president of the United States with impunity. They proved it.
Yeah.
They did it.
Yep. They did,
which I think was what gave.
Go ahead.
I think that whole thing led to the entire downfall of the United States from where we are right now. I think it all started right there on that day in Dallas.
And you know what, Ted? And I apologize for the delay here. We have a slight delay, and that's why it sounds kind of choppy. But it's people say, well, why was Kennedy killed? I mean, I don't think we can necessarily, or we have to, pick one reason. He did a few things that were exceptional reasons for neutralizing him. I mean, everything from the money to the CIA to wanting to smash the CIA into the wind, and numerous other reasons. And then I think I think they missed the opportunity. What, in Chicago and Miami, or in Chicago and somewhere in Florida. And then,
and plus, remember, he wanted to do full disclosure. He wanted to do full disclosure on UFOs, and he wanted us out of Southeast Asia. I always remember all these different things. I mean, and what happened too when he was put into office, the mob did a bunch of favors up there in Chicago with ballot stuffing. We know that happened now. I mean, that's just history, to get him in office, and they expected him to do a big payback for them. And then when he decided to use Bobby to go after the mob, because the mob and the CIA were directly linked together. See, the CIA and the mob now have become so intertwined with the drug laundering and the money laundering and bringing these drugs in from Afghanistan through the military and through all the black ops that they do, that they really can't be differentiated any longer. They have just become a super corrupt organization. Even Jimmy Carter said this, a few years ago. He said that we no longer have a functional government of the United States, and Alex Jones says it very, very succinctly. He says that our government's been hijacked. We don't have a functional government of the United States anymore, and it's true. We don't. What we have is a resemblance of what we once had. Of something that was once wonderful, and we still are basking in the shadow of the glory of what once was America. The United States of America, but sadly, it's just little by little now, especially now with all of these crazy things with the FEMA camps being set up, and now with these martial law drills using troops, which completely goes against posse comitatus on the U.S. soil, taking over Texas and taking over parts of California now. Now they're going to take over Florida and Utah. I mean, are you kidding me? With helicopter drones and all kinds of other live action stuff they're doing in the middle of the night. I mean, what a nightmare, Doug. I mean, who in the world would have thought this would have happened to the United States, that we actually would be allowing this? And where in the world? Why doesn't Congress, grow a set up there and get some testosterone going and say, hey, we're not going to let you do this. How about just no? How about no? We're not going to do this. I mean, what's up with this, Doug? I guess we have been that taken over, haven't we?
Well, you're exactly right. We're a captured operation, and I think first of all, where's the outrage from the people that should that we should know better? I mean, but where's the outrage from Congress, from our legislative body, to say no, you're not going to go against the Constitution by doing this urban warfare inside the United States, or these urban warfare drills. And it's funny, Ted, we're not hearing much more about the FEMA camps and about the potential for martial law, the ammunition purchases. It's still going on. I mean, the ammunition purchases, the bulk ammo purchases, it hasn't stopped. But we're not hearing as much about it. And it's like we move on to something different because we've got ADHD or something. I don't know. It's Oh man, you got F-16s flying over people's houses. I mean, come on, and helicopters and rappelling off of high rises. I mean, and we're okay with this. What about the mayors or the city council people?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, what? And Texas, I'm surprised that Texas is even tolerating it. I mean, I really am. I mean, I don't know. I don't particularly want people tromping through my yard with machine guns. I mean, I don't really think I would feel real comfortable with all that. I mean, I don't know why it's necessary. They haven't done it up to this point. But I guess, and remember also, Doug, when they were doing the 9/11 stuff, remember they had that huge drill going on with NORAD when 9/11 was going on. And everybody had that big stand down, and they were doing these big drills of the trade towers being hit. You remember that? And all of a sudden now they find out later that it wasn't a drill. It really happened. Same thing happened with Boston bombing when they did the false flag up there. They were doing a big drill of a bomb going off in Boston. They had all those police already put out and ready to go. I mean, how do we know that this thing's not another false flag? And then when they have the troops on the ground and they start doing all of this, they just decide to go ahead and do a takeover.
Right.
I mean, we don't know that.
No, we don't.
We really don't know. If you deploy that many Army military personnel into a state, and you take over all the courthouses and all the civic buildings and all the things they're planning on doing, and they do that, how do we know they're just not going to stay there?
Right. You don't. There's no way. And you know, I'm waiting for that moment, like that 9/11 moment, where one of these exercises will either turn into, facilitate, or be concurrent with some sort of event, attack, or whatever. And that's all we need for the justification of martial law, and people will accept that. Kissinger's statement about the troops in the streets of Los Angeles he made back in 1971. You know, people would be outraged today. But tomorrow they'll welcome the troops. And boy, was he right on the money with that. I think it was Kissinger that said that. But yeah, you're exactly right.
It was. And I also like his the one quote he had about how troops are just mindless beasts to be used and basically discarded or something like that. And they were just they were just BT. They were just gunshot fodder is all he considered them to be. He had no respect for troops at all. And it's really kind of sad too, because I mean the guy's pretty smart. I mean we all know that, but gosh, he's got to be in his 90s now, and I just don't even know what in the world that guy. I really don't get him at all. He's just weird. But of course we know these Sabatine Frankis and what they do and all the stuff that they do is just absolutely awful. Let's go. Let's see here. Let me pull this other thing too up. There's one other thing I want to talk to you about too.
Yeah, we got about 3 minutes till the top of the hour. We got about 3 minutes to the top of the hour.
So this is interesting too.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm pulling it up right now on the iPod because I start talking to you about all this stuff, and I get to the point where I'm just like, this is ridiculous. The U.S. Let me read a couple of news stories I talked about on the Power Hour this morning. The U.S. is heightening military presence in the Gulf as Iran nuclear deal approaches. Okay. Fighting the war on terror by banning cash. I want to talk about that today. In France, they're starting to ban cash now that people have any kind of withdrawals, hardly any withdrawals out of their savings account in cash. The director of Respiratory Protection System company warns that ISIS will launch a chemical attack in London's tube. I'm sure they can sell a lot more of their chemical protection gear by doing that. Sanctions versus profit. The U.S. government to justify arms exports to Russia. Rising China arms exports to threaten the U.S. influence worldwide because they're making stuff as good as we do but cheaper. That's what happens. You pay somebody $1 a day to work. And children suffer genetic damages from pesticides in Argentina, primarily from glyphosate. This is a new study that just came out. And finally, the World Health Organization is even admitting the horrible problems that we're having with glyphosate or Roundup as far as poisoning people and destroying kidneys and all this toxicity that's occurring. But again, if people want to learn more about all the health stuff, go to healthmasters.com, or you give us a call, too. If you're calling internationally or on shortwave, you can call us at 863-967-0244. That's 863-967-0244. If you're calling us locally or in the United States or in Canada, it's 800-726-1834, and we're always there 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time.
It's great. I got to tell you, responsive as well. And folks, if you've got succinct questions for Ted, my goodness, they're there to help you. And the products, I've got to tell you something. With one of these days, with your permission, or once you get a video that it's okay to post. I think, and I can't remember what you said about the video, but people have got to see your operation there. You gave a video tour of your lab, and folks, this is not some kitchen table laboratory that Ted has. It's really a class tight operation, and you can tell I guess the bottom line with me is, years taking Centrum, the other various supplements over the counter. When I switched to taking the supplements from Health Masters, I felt a lot different, and I feel a lot different, and it's made a big difference in me personally. So that I guess that really tells the story. It doesn't matter, and really nothing else matters except the results, and the results are there, and you got to stick with it, man. It's I got to tell you though, Ted, it's no fun taking 25 or 30 supplements a day. I mean, I shouldn't say it's no fun. It's
Well, I agree with you. I can't stand doing it. But it's worth how you feel, though. That's the whole thing. I mean, people are always saying, "Do you really take all these vitamins?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really do." And they say, "Well, why do you do it?" I said, "Because I feel so good doing it." And I said, "I've tried not to take them, and I started having all these joint pains and issues." And I said, "I don't want to take this many pills. I don't like taking this many pills. It's just the way it is." And the way I look at them is like I finally had to reframe it in my mind, and I'm like, "Well, I don't look at them as pills anymore. I look at them as food supplements." So it's kind of like if I eat a serving of peas and there's 50 peas on my plate, I don't sit there and count the peas and say, "Oh, I can't believe I got to eat 50 peas." I just figure, well, I got to just eat these peas, and that's how I look at the supplements now. And I tell you what, when I started reframing it like that, it made it a lot easier. And people always say it always refreshes them too when they know that I don't like taking the pills either. I don't like doing this. I don't like taking supplements. I wish our food wasn't so adulterated and hadn't been so processed, and the soil had been so depleted of vital nutrients that we wouldn't have to take supplements. I really do.
I agree. The Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Dr. Ted Brewer sitting in for Joe tonight. Ted Brewer, just a tremendous wealth of information, a fountain of knowledge. Visit his website, healthmasters.com. Folks, on a routine basis, he sits in for Dr. Joyce Riley, the Power Hour. You got to catch him there as well. But healthmasters.com. I'm going to tell you something. If you want something that will revolutionize and change your health, well-being, that's the place to go. And it's got certainly my seal of approval. And Lady, our studio dog, 4 paws up. That's our rating system, of course. It's the highest you can go. And anyway, Ted, welcome back. Thanks for sitting in with me tonight. Appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime you ever guys want to have me on, I'm here. I'm just, Joe was so exhausted and I'm moving. He called me up and I said, "Hey, no problem, man. I'm on. I'm ready. I'm in."
Yeah.
And so, it's just I enjoy it. I enjoy you guys. I consider you guys to be friends, so it makes it easy.
We are friends, and I got to tell you something. We are on the same page, on the same path, and we're trying to expose the truth. And right now, we're going to just wait for Stan Deyo here. Let's see here. I believe Joe's operating the board from behind the scenes, away from the studio. So we're waiting on Stan to connect with us. You see, Ted, here's the deal. Every time I try to bring Stan on or a guest on using Skype, what usually happens is I just take down the entire program, okay? Because I just can't learn or haven't been able to learn the process. So, at any rate, we're waiting for
you know what I always do.
Go ahead.
You know what I do with all that? I write down everything. I write every keystroke down when they want me to do a new thing like that, and I put it on a sheet of paper, and I say, no, don't pretend like I know what that keystroke's supposed to be. You tell me what keystroke and what I'm supposed to hit, and then if you do it 3 or 4 times, then you have full directions in front of you. It's usually not too bad, but you're absolutely right. If you try to do it on the fly,
oh man,
it's all coming down.
Yeah, and I've been able to.
We can start back on news. We can start back on news while we're waiting for Stan. We do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, let's do that, and hopefully Joe will give me the nod when Stan is on, in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, let's either that or dead air, and I prefer not to have dead air, and I'm sure you do too. Before we start, I just want to remind people tomorrow night, Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford tomorrow night, and tonight I'll be on Coast to Coast AM tonight. I believe it's just going to be for the news segment. I think, unless they want to extend it into the first hour. I don't know, but just want to give you a heads up on that. So go ahead, Ted. Yeah, let's, while we're waiting for Stan here, go ahead.
Well, here's another article that I had today. This is a very easy show for me to do today because I already had all the news stories pulled up for the Power Hour this morning, so it just makes it easy to be a guest tonight because we got all kinds of stuff to talk about. Here's an interesting one. It says, by hook or by crook, determined Obama vows to go beyond executive actions to rule. This is an article by Mark Salvo. It says, controversially, President Obama announced in a speech that he was using the powers of the executive branch to shield millions of illegal immigrants from deportation, to ban ammunition for AR-15s, to ban the importation and sale of AK-47s, which he's already done, and even to seize a broad range of assets, including farms, industry, infrastructure, and food during a declared emergency. He also used the power of his pen to delay implementation of his own pet project, Obamacare. Just last week, Obama issued an executive action requiring a government agency to reduce the carbon emissions by a whopping 40% with no input from Congress and involvement with the public. We're in the middle of a coup. This country's been we've been taken over.
Yeah, we have. All right, go ahead.
Could you hold that thought for a second? I got a brief update. Skype is having some serious issues, and have you guys been hearing any clicking, especially you dads since you're using Skype?
We have a long delay, which is abnormal on this platform.
Skype. Yep. Skype's messing up bad. Remember that machine gun sound? People have been experiencing that today. So,
all right. Well, that's nice.
So, Stan, if you're listening, please call in by phone. I am looking for you, and I'll bring you right on.
All right.
I don't know if you want to reconnect via phone and mute your Skype. Maybe that'll mitigate the delay. Might not.
Well, actually, I
apologize
can't
for the delay. There was nothing I could do that was working, so I even reinstalled it, and same issue.
All right, if you want to just contact Stan and see if we can work this out, that'd be appreciated, and then let us know. Jump back in. But meanwhile, we'll continue with Ted. So I'll just await your mechanics in the background. You go ahead and do what you need to do, and we'll wait for Stan. But meanwhile, Ted, go ahead and
let me see it right here before we go. Let me just check
to
see if he's in here,
because
he does call in usually if this doesn't fall through.
Talk amongst yourselves, people.
And I got to thank you on air, Ted, for coming on tonight.
Well, I'm having fun with you guys. I'm enjoying this. This has been, you can tell this is not scripted.
No, of course not.
Ted tired before the show. Like you said last time, I can't sleep. I got to keep this thing on if I want to rest. So you do such a great job, and you not only captivate an audience through some of the tools and techniques like the propaganda and sensationalism. You do it with truth, and that's rare these days.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, thank you.
Well, Joe, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just?
I got to see if this is. I'm going to go to the screening room and see if this is Stan. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
All right, we will do that. Live radio at its finest, Ted. You can tell that I do this for a living, right? Yeah.
Live radio at its finest.
The Three Stooges.
Forgive me for laughing. That was a good comment. But hey, I'm having a good time. Okay, I'm just glad to be on with you guys. Now, here's another article I wanted to cover. Clinton Foundation's deep financial ties to the Ukrainian oligarch who pushed for closer ties to the European Union revealed. Washington blog between 2009 and 2013, including when Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State. The Clinton Foundation received at least $8.6 million from Viktor Pinchuk Foundation, according to that foundation, which is based in Kyiv, Ukraine. It was created by Mr. Pinchuk, whose fortune stems from a pipe-making company. He served 2 terms as an elected member of the Ukrainian parliament as a proponent of closer ties between the Ukraine and the European Union. Every time you dig into this Clinton stuff, it just gets worse. I mean, now we know they have hundreds of millions of dollars in their HSBC account over in Switzerland. But remember, this is the same Hillary Clinton that said she left the White House and they're penniless. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, that's interesting.
How much money? I mean, how much money do they have? No, the layers of the Clinton dynasty. And when I say dynasty, I'm not talking about Bill Clinton's White House run, but if you look at from Arkansas and all of everything about the drug running, and Hillary.
That's right.
So, but I mean, Ted, let me ask you, after your assessment right now today, if you had to guess, do you think would you consider Hillary the presumptive nominee for the Democratic elections?
I don't think she has a snowball's chance in HE66 to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. I think they know better. She's got so much mess on her now. Benghazi's hanging around her like a rotten pork chop. I mean, everything's a mess with her. I mean, I can't even possibly imagine that the Democratic Party would actually try to run her with all of this stuff, with the IRS stuff, and with this thing with this foundation, with all of this mess. You know, I don't see how it's even possible. But you know, I mean, yes, stranger things could happen. I guess. I mean,
well, in her absence.
But I mean, I would hope they could come up with somebody better than this. I mean, but you know, it's funny. Dr. Deagle's a friend of mine. He had an interesting comment to make about Hillary Clinton. One time I was doing a show with him. He was so funny. He goes, we all know the New World Order is controlled by Satanists. And I said, well, yeah, we do. And he goes, but you know what's interesting about this? He goes, Hillary is so evil and so awful, and there's no telling how many possessions that she has in her as far as being possessed, that this Satan-controlled New World Order, they're even scared of Hillary because they don't even want her there because they don't know what she'll do. She'll come off the chain on them, and they wouldn't even know how to control her if she was president. And you know what? I think he's right. I don't think they want somebody that loose of a cannon, in that presidential seat. They want somebody who's more easily controlled. And she just kind of runs her mouth and says whatever she wants to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I watched her in the Benghazi hearings. That infamous "what difference does it make?" But her actions there, I think, more important than that statement that everyone points to, I think, is her actions, her mannerisms, her dress. There's something about her and the occult. When I say something, and I happened to be in a bar one time. This is quite a long time ago. Okay. I don't go into bars anymore, but I was drinking. Stopped after a pretty long day, had a beer, and next to me was a Secret Service agent who was off visiting his family in the area of the country I was in, and he was pretty tanked. And let me tell you something. He had when Hillary or when Bill was running for president, he had and he told me one occasion. And believe this if you want to dismiss it as just gossip or whatever. But he said on one occasion when they were on the campaign trail, Hillary Clinton had a pretty famous actress in her hotel room, which was separate from Bill Clinton's at the time. So, and I can't remember if he said she was campaigning for Bill separately or if they had separate hotel rooms. But regardless, he said, look. She had some dalliances that they had it was crazy. So it doesn't matter, I guess. But anyway, go ahead.
I mean, word on the street. I mean, everybody knows that she's probably gay. I mean, she's probably a lesbian. I mean, gosh, that's not even a hard stretch. I mean, it's not even a hard thing for anybody to say. But let me tell you what happened. This is interesting too. Back in the '90s, when I was on the president, I was with the presidents and all that kind of stuff on the seminar circuit. And I mean, I must have done, and this isn't a sanguine stretch. It must have been 50 or 60 seminars with George Bush, and probably 30 or 40 with Barbara Bush, and probably around 60 or 70 with Colin Powell, and probably 40 with Schwarzkopf. I got to really know these guys really well. And so every time President Bush was around, there was always a Secret Service detail with him. And so we'd talk to these guys, and a couple of them had actually left the White House detail, which is like the pinnacle of the Secret Service, asked to go and leave Clinton's White House because they said that Hillary was so horrible and so mean to them that they would rather be with the ex-president than stay there with Hillary, because those two stayed boozed up and drunk all the time. And Hillary, they said that her language was F thee this, F this, GD this, GD that, F, 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 F. They said that she was one of the most foulest human beings they've ever encountered in their entire life, and they wanted nothing to do with even being on the White House detail, and that they had these big drunken parties in the White House all the time. I mean, unbelievable. But, I mean, these are Secret Service guys telling me this, and I'm on the seminar circuit. So, again, like you said earlier, I didn't see it. Take with it from what you'd have it with, but these were active Secret Service with George Bush Sr. And then, of course, of course, I will say one credit for was with W, other than, I guess, the call boys at night or whatever they were doing in the White House with all that, but they didn't have those big, huge, massive drunk parties up there in the White House anymore. And, of course, we all know that Bush, he even said that he'd been alcoholic when he was younger. So I guess from all of his days in his caskets and sodomizing one another at Yale and, Skull and Bones. And so, I guess after a while, you kind of just try to inebriate yourself not to think about all of this stuff. But whenever and I've told you guys this before, and I'm going to tell you again, whenever I was with any of these guys, except for Robert Schuller was really rude, and Bill Cosby was pretty rough, but he was okay with me. Other than that, everybody else on that campaign trail, it was, they're getting paid big bucks to be there, except for one of the founders of a major search engine. I can't mention that on the air, but that was pretty awful with him. But Bush was always really nice. I remember one time we were standing behind the counter, behind the stage, and he was about to go on. I was about to go on. And I had a big 2-liter bottle of water with me, the distilled water I brought out of the motorhome, and I had it sitting on the steps behind me, right? And he walked up and he says, "Whose water is this?" And he picks up the water and starts drinking it. Didn't know whose it was.
Who is
and I
this?
said, "Oh, that's mine, but you can have it, Mr. President." President Bush.
Oh, okay.
I tell you when I'm telling you guys, when I tell you that I know these guys, I used to sit there and just chit chat with Barbara Bush all the time. Me and Schwarzkopf used to hang out all the time. Colin Powell and I were on a first-name basis. And the crazy thing about it is if I had known what I know now, I'd have never made it on the seminar for almost 7 years. They'd have thrown me out of there because I'd have started asking questions I wasn't supposed to ask.
That's amazing.
But back that was over 20 years ago, Doug. I was doing all that, but I've got pictures of all these guys. It's on my website, and so I don't make any of this stuff up. I really do know these guys.
Yeah, if only we would have known then what we know now, and I think that learning curve, process. I mean, we all and folks, this is what we Joe and I talk about is we're engaged in that process, and I'll tell you something. They had to drag me. I mean, I was dragged here, kicking and screaming, not wanting to believe.
Me too.
Oh man, it's nuts. We'll continue because I like this. This is good topical.
Well, what's so funny is one time I was when Bush Jr. was in, right, and 9/11 happened. I was really upset that they were going into Iraq, and and all this stuff and doing all this stuff. I said that's not right. It's not right. It's not right. And then we started having those problems with the gas prices going way up when Bush was president, right? The barrels of oil kept going up, and I was still so naive. I said, well, why didn't Bush just sign an executive order and make this handling of oil and oil speculation illegal? I mean, that's easy enough to do. I mean, God, they signed executive orders for everything else. Sure. And I didn't even think about the fact that it was all an insider's trick. I mean, he didn't want to make it illegal. He wanted they own all the oil there in Texas and all the other stuff, and the globalists own all the stuff. They don't want to do that. He does exactly what he was told to do, just like Obama does. I guarantee if Obama came off the chain and decided to do something he wasn't supposed to do, he would disappear or be replaced so quickly that you couldn't even bat an eyelash. He'd be gone so quick, and then we'd have Biden as the president. God help us with that. And and so it's just people don't realize these guys are all handled. They're all handled. They're told what to say. Remember, Bill Clinton even admitted that one time in a moment of clarity. He says, when you finally get to the top, you become president, you realize that somebody else makes all the decisions for you. Remember when he said that?
Yeah, and that was. But
he must have been sober. Moment of clarity. It must have been whatever. I think that was all going on with Monica Lewinsky and all of his exploits with her. And somebody once told me, and I read an article on it, it made sense. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that Monica Lewinsky was a Mossad agent. Now, whether that's true, who knows? Who cares? It doesn't make any difference at this point. But the point is, a lot of this stuff, they put these people in these places to control these guys and to make sure that everything goes the way they want them to go. And when I was doing that show with Steele this morning, he said something very interesting on break. I want you guys to interview him. He said, because he was like a former spy, right? And we were talking about all the things that was going on as far as in the global economy. He started talking about the World Bank and the world, in the Rothschild banking cartel. This guy is completely awake. And I thought how fascinating that a guest of this caliber would actually know all of this different stuff. He's the number one fiction guy. He critiques books, I guess. He analyzes books or reads books or whatever for Amazon in the fiction category. Guy's absolutely brilliant. He sounds just like Alan Alda on the air. Remember Alan Alda from MASH?
Sure. Yeah.
I told him, I said, have I ever told you sound like Alan Alda? He goes, no, you sound like Alan Alda. He's got a real dry sense of humor, too. You'll love the guy. But what was interesting with the whole thing is, if you continue to do the things that you know you're not supposed to do, you're supposed to get in trouble for it. But the Clintons just seem to be the Teflon whatevers, man. They could do whatever they want to do. Anybody else having done all of this stuff would already be in jail. Isn't that amazing? It's like they have impunity.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? I mean, all of these guys the banks steal billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they pay $1 billion fine, and everybody goes, okay, well, somebody paid a fine. But nobody goes to jail. Do you remember what happened with the savings and loan debacle with President Reagan? He put a bunch of bankers in jail.
Yeah.
He had enough of that mess. and that put a big stop to it for a real long time. But then they got when they did away with their banking regulations in '95 and in '99, that was the end of it when they started doing all that. It just is what it is. Let's go to another news story. So we got to talk about Hillary Clinton and everybody else. The Fed urges banks to call the police on customers who withdraw $5,000 or more. Banks are already required to file suspicious activity reports on their customers, with threats of fines and even jail time for directors if financial institutions don't meet quotas. But an investor and financial blogger, Simon Black, points out last week that a senior official from the Justice Department spoke to a group of bankers about the need for them to rat out their customers to the local police. Assistant Attorney General Leslie Caldwell gave a speech in which he urged banks to alert law enforcement authorities about the investigation so that the police could seize the funds or at least initiate an investigation for you taking your own money out of your account. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. Well, I really don't know what to say about that.
You know what, Ted, we talked about this last night for a little bit, but I'll just add something because today I spoke with an official from PNC Bank, and it's a large bank, obviously. Now she holds a position that it's an oversight position of the branches, and they've received instructions from the Department of Justice specifically to increase their surveillance of their customers and to engage them, to proactively engage them in conversation if they're making withdrawals, to find out what they're using the money for. And if and I'm not making this up, I mean, the conversation took place, and she was even alarmed by the aggressiveness that they're going after this. So if someone's taking out, and it's not just $5,000, it's multiple occasions of amounts that would be close to or over $5,000. So the scrutiny, it's you don't have to go in the bank on a Monday and withdraw $5,000 or $4,999 to avoid that $5,000 line. If you go in on the Monday, take out $2,500, and then Tuesday take out $1,000, and then Wednesday take out $1,500, they'll look at that and say, "Wait a minute, you're doing something wrong here." Regardless, even if you're in business and your actions are not consistent with the last 90 days of your business operation. So in other words, if you've been making withdrawals and deposits that are inconsistent with that behavior, and it's so important to understand that behavior will be looked at as potentially criminal. And I heard that, it's directly from the horse's mouth, but I can't get her to come on the air.
All right, guys. I've been trying to locate Stan.
Nope. Go ahead, Joe.
And let me see if this is him right here in a queue. I'm not sure. There's 1 or 2 719 numbers. He does have the update, or has the article on his website stating he would be on tonight. Good. So maybe due to the failure of Skype, he went to other means. But hopefully this is him. Let's see. 719. Is this you, Stan?
No, apparently not. Well, we're going to play the music version of Muskrat Love here while you're doing that, right?
Absolutely.
No, if you want, I can contact. I've got Steele's phone number. If you guys want to call him for the third hour, we can put Steele on for the third hour too.
Yeah, we can do that.
You got Kissinger's number handy?
You want to do that?
Yeah.
I got Steele's number right here. Let me give it to you. I can't give it to you over the air though. I can't. No. I have to call you back, Joe. I can't give it out over the air. Steele have a fit if I do that.
How about this, Dad? You take us out. I'll put Ted on hold and myself on hold, and I'll get the info that way.
Live radio. All right.
Okay. Well, I can just call you on your other phone. I can call you on your cell phone too if you want, Joe.
You can stay right on the line, Ted. Hold on.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, unscheduled, ladies and gentlemen, but that's all right. It's a live radio, and it's fun. As folks are listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report, you see, we have to have program markers, and it's a long story behind the scenes. But bottom line is this: we're awaiting information about Stan Deyo. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. We're having technical problems on Skype. We're having a long delay. Machine gun sounds go. That's really a nice touch. That does happen once in a while when we do air, and it's really a nice sound effect. I don't know where they're coming from, whether we're getting hacked or whatever. We're certainly not playing it. We're not shooting off any guns here. But anyway, having said that, Ted Brewer is sitting in for Joe tonight. Very interesting stories, or very interesting analysis of things. Before the interruption, Ted, we were talking about the monetary system and about how we're under surveillance of the banks and such. Now, I mean, what the heck? This is America. I mean, isn't this what is this? Going into the cashless society, I suppose.
Well,
right?
now I do want you to know we've contacted Robert David Steele, and he will be on within a few minutes, so we're good. So we're good. We'll
okay.
have another guest on for you tonight.
Well, that's cool.
So
yeah,
that way you and I can continue doing what we're doing.
And
he's waiting there. Joe's going to connect with him in just a few minutes.
Okay, so apparently we're going to have to reschedule Stan and then whatever is going on in the background, that's fine. I'm not privy to seeing that and up front here. So, and since you interviewed him this morning, and I have not had a chance to really look him up, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna listen mostly to your interview because you know where to go. You did it this morning, and that'd be great. So that's kind of cool. All right, it's great.
Oh, we had a great time. I had a great time with you. Yeah.
So, and I want to hear.
We've got to get Joy. We just have to get
Alan Alda voice. Oops. Oh, one ringy dingy. Remember laughing? All right.
Yep.
Hey, you're on the air. Is this Robert Steele?
Is this Robert?
No, this is Stan.
Oh, Stan. Oh my goodness. Okay. It's
we're good.
Stan,
We've got it going now. Go ahead there, Joe. Doug.
Okay. Yes, Stan. Sorry about that. We are just dialing randomly. Okay, we're dialing randomly, and
my neighbor said they got a call from you. I mean, goodness.
Well, if you see Joe showing up at your neighbor's house with one of those big checks and playing Ed McMahon, sorry about that. Apparently Skype is giving us some real issues. Our regular Tuesdays with Stan Deyo. Thank you so much for your patience, Stan. And here we go. Here we are, Stan Deyo from StanDeyo.com. Our regular Tuesday guest, a little bit tardy on our side because of Skype issues. Once again, and no coincidence that I'm at the helm and I can't seem to bring anyone on. But anyway, Stan, it's good to have you here, my brother. And actually, Ted Brewer, founder and director of HealthMasters.com, is on with us, sitting in place of Joe. So,
hi, Ted.
So anyway, Stan, great to have you, my friend. I saw your show images at StanDeyo.com, and so we got a lot to talk about. So, you just take it away, sir.
Well, the images that I have on the site concern the buildup of ice and the melting of ice at the poles, and also the CERN collider. I know that airplane that crashed in Europe, just across the French border there, they've been trying to say, some of the emails have been coming in saying, it's the CERN. They turned on the CERN and it screwed up the plane. The problem with that is that they haven't turned on the CERN yet. There'll be several days to several weeks before they can get it up and running because I found a short in one of the 8 supermagnet coils there. So,
Well, what about that plane that went down, Stan? Airbus, some say, it descended, 8,000 feet in a matter of minutes. It was a pretty rough ride for the people on board, and there was no communication. Any thoughts on that, aside from that?
Well, the only thing I can think of is some catastrophic decompression. There are war games that are played in that area in the air by various air forces, and they say there was none of that happening. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But whatever it was, apparently the plane was intact. I'm looking at the wreckage here on the TV, and the wreckage is spread over such a big area that you think if it were intact when it hit, that there would be a few pieces bounced around and be a hole in the side of the mountain or whatever. But this is all over the place, which to me may indicate some sort of an explosion in the air that absolutely demolished the craft. I don't know how you could impact in a single place and spread that much debris in such tiny pieces all over the face of that mountain. It's just kind of difficult to do when you got valleys and peaks in between there. But anyway, catastrophic decompression due to explosion on board or something. I don't know what. But I'm pretty sure here it wasn't CERN. I did put some pictures up on the show images page at standeyo.com, the usual place, and I show pictures of the inside of the CERN collider. You know, the thing that is about 16.5 miles in circumference, and showing, like in the middle picture there, on the second row, you see a picture of a man standing on a railing, you know, on the other side of the collider, like tube, and you can see how big this collider is. The nations, there are 111 nations that subscribe to this. There were 20 like founding nations, but you know, that are like primary members of the board. But 111 nations use it, and the cost has been over $4.4 billion to build this thing, looking for a tiny little particle called a Higgs boson particle. And you know, everywhere you look on the internet, you ask, why is it so important to build this huge collider to find out about this little tiny particle? And every description given comes from CERN, I think, which says basically, we want to know what the elementary particle of the universe is. That 96% of the universe is dark matter or dark energy that we can't see. We want to know what it is. And so that's why we spend all this money, is to determine, you know, if there is a Higgs boson particle, which they've done, and, you know, how the universe works, and if our standard model, the physics model of the universe, is still viable. Well, as it stands now, the standard, you know, physical equation model for the universe that is used throughout the physics industry only explains about 4% of the universe. The 96% that's missing is kind of lumped into the dark matter category. And that, to me, okay, I guess it's important, but you got to wonder, was it that important to put so many resources over so many years into building this thing? I mean, if you look at the pictures I've got there on the website there on the show images page, there's a lot of detailed work that's gone into building this thing. It's not just something thrown together. I mean, they're like, you know, 300 or 400 feet under. I think it's 300 feet underground, and that big tube has to be cooled with like liquid hydrogen or nitrogen or whatever they're using to lower the temperature. They have to get it down as close as they can to absolute zero, which is impossible, but they get it really cold so that they can have kind of an uninterrupted, you know, uninterfered with type result from the test when they're shooting these protons at each other. And you know, I haven't gotten a satisfactory answer for spending that much time and money and resources, and why so many countries are interested in it. As we discussed last week, I think that this may have something to do with, and in fact, I've located a couple of articles which you can link to under the CERN 3 and the CERN 1 pictures. If you go to the text and click on it, you go to the articles, and one of them talks about that they're thinking they might punch through into alternate universes or parallel universes to our own. Now, this starts to sound like the real-world equivalent of like a Stargate. Instead of going to stars, we're going to universes. And they are hoping that this will allow them to open up access to parallel universes. Might be one of the things they can do to prove a new model for the universe, which is, you know, like brain theory or some of the others they put forward. There's got to be more to this. I'm just saying there's got to be more to this than what they're telling us.
And Ted, feel free to jump in here. We're talking with Stan Deyo, the real Indiana Jones.
It's interesting. Hey, Stan, I'm Ted Brower. It's nice to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
We had a guest on this. We had a guy on this morning. His name was Dr. Close, and he wrote a book on transdimensional physics. He's a former university professor, and he's very well versed in interdimensional stuff and has written all kinds of books and topics and papers on this. And he said something very interesting this morning. He said that where God resides is basically called the eternal now. It's the realm, the universe, the sub-dimension of consciousness. And he said that the problem is when you start opening up these different realms and these different places, you don't really know where you're going to go or what's going to happen or what's going to come out. His name is Dr. Ed Close. It was phenomenal. It was a great interview this morning. He's been doing this for, 30, 40 years. He's a trained physicist. And he said they don't really need to be doing stuff like this because the curiosity that they're bringing into this to try to figure out what's going on could be completely destructive to the current reality that we know of on this little holographic planet that we found ourselves on, and that they don't really know what they're doing. They're more curious. And then I talked to another guy last week from Switzerland, and he told me that he's a banker from Switzerland. He's a friend of mine. And he told me that the Swiss are just extremely curious as to what's going on. And if you talk to Steve Quayle about this, he goes into the whole thing about opening up stargates and opening up other dimensions and opening up the portals of hell. And Tom Horn also feels about that because we don't really know what we're doing. We start opening up these other dimensions because they're saying they know there's 9 dimensions. Some say 10, some say 13. But they're trying to open up all of these different dimensional portals to find out what's in these portals. And personally, what if we really don't want to know what's in the eternal now? What if we really don't want to peer into that? I mean, what happens if we start messing with that stuff and the entire holograph that we're in down here on this planet gets all messed up? I mean, to me, it's just not worth the risk. It's just not. There's not a big enough upside unless they're just trying to play God. And maybe what these guys are doing with these trans-dimensional things that they're trying to do, and with this transhumanism they're trying to do that Tom Horn talks about so succinctly, is that they're trying to meld their bodies with minds with machines, and they may not want to lose their consciousness or their soul in the process. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to get away from losing their soul when they go into these machines. I don't know, guys. It's all speculation to me.
Well, I don't know that I'm looking at quite as exotically as some of the things that you're saying, others are saying about it, but I do know that at the Tower of Babel, Nimrod was trying to build an access portal at the top of his tower to go across into where the angels dwelt, where God dwelt. And, of course, they came down, it says they, plural, and destroyed his ability to do that, knocked down the tower and confused the language of people so they couldn't work together to do it. Now, if Nimrod had the technology to gate into a parallel universe or universes, I'm sure he didn't have the infrastructure we've got in place now to build a CERN collider to do it. The only way I can figure that he had, access to that kind of technology is if one of the fallen ones spoken of in Genesis 6 did give him, a portal gate. And the thing that I find interesting about the towers is that they are raised up above the ground far enough that when, in little g gods, when the gods came through into our universe, that the energy density on their bodies was allowed to dissipate by several levels. So they walked down and they stayed at each level a bit and came down to the ground, allowed to dissipate before they touched humans, or otherwise they would kill them. And Ezekiel's flaming chariot flamed because it was burning hot, and the energy of its molecules was radiating out from it and lowering its energy temperature down to ours. It came through in the sky. The angels that came and went when Jacob was on the mountain had the dream of the angels ascending and descending the ladder up into the upper realms. When the angels were cast down on Mount Hermon, it was high places where the access portals seem to work best. So I don't know that CERN certainly it's not high enough. It's down under the ground. And I just don't know that that's, the kind of technology that we need unless, I'm throwing this out here kind of as a guess. Suppose Satan has given the technology to our guys to build this thing so that, the doorway to the lower realms, to the pit, can be opened up, as it says in the book of Revelation. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Wow.
It's also interesting, Stan. When Moses came off the mountain, he was still glowing. Remember, in fact, he was glowing so brightly they had to put a veil over him.
Yeah.
When Jesus was resurrected from the dead and he was by the tomb, he told Mary, "Don't touch me yet, for I've not returned yet to the Father." And so there's definitely something with this transdimensional physics when they go in and out of these portals, in and out of these different realms. Their body composition changes, and you're absolutely right. And see, they're not like us. In fact, it says in the book of, I forgot which New Testament book it is, that we'll be changed in a twinkling of an eye. Will no longer be flesh and blood. Will be flesh and bone, and everything changes. I mean, we used to call it anionic and cationic as far as in chemistry. When your body chemistry changes, I mean, human beings can spontaneously erupt into flame. We know that. We've seen that already in research laboratories. And so you're absolutely right. We don't know what's going to happen and how these people are going to be changed, or what's going to come out and how it's going to be changed, and what the effect's going to be to the people that are in that area or in that vicinity.
Yeah, there's even one extra biblical book, I forget the name of it now, that talked about what the disciples saw when Jesus ascended, the final time when he left them. And they said that like lightning, small lightning was seen underneath his feet as he raised up in the air and then went to meet Elijah and Moses, etc., up on the in the sky there, in clouds or whatever. There's definitely some sort of a high energy phenomenon associated with beings coming and going from the parallel universe or concentric universes, however you want to describe them. You were mentioning the 13 dimensions or more that they say in physics about the universe, and I think a lot of this extra dimensions has stemmed from a problem that Einstein didn't interpret correctly, or some data he didn't interpret correctly when he did the general relativity, and that was on the results of whether there was an ether space or not. And when he based his stuff on what the Michelson-Morley experiment had apparently proven, that there was no change in the speed of light in the ether of space. And in 1926, I think it was, this was disproven, and that was never incorporated into Einstein's work.
That's right. That's why the quantum physics and the transcendental physics are trying to put this all together, because you're right, Einstein missed a big chunk of this, and that's according to Dr. Close, who wrote this book on this topic that we talked about this morning.
Well, absolutely, and I can see how the mistake was made. There's no point in going over in the air. It was a Michelson-Morley thing, and they had to use the Dutch physicist, the Lorentz-Fitzgerald transform, based on the Michelson-Morley finding, and the Lorentz-Fitzgerald transform was a plug that they put into the mathematics to explain why the speed of light didn't change yet, going ahead of the Earth and going at right angles to the ocean, coming back, and that kind of stuff. And using Einstein's method, if you take a cup of tea, say, Earl Grey with a little bit of cream in it so that it's got color, and you got a few tea leaves float in it, and you stir it up, well, you'll see that the center of the stirring, the vortex in the teacup, that can be the sun. And little tea leaves that are orbiting around that at different distances can be like, say, the Earth. And if you go, make yourself microscopic and go sit on one of those tea leaves that's orbiting around inside the teacup there, and if you stick your hand off the side of the tea leaf to the right and one to the front of you as you're moving around in the tea, you won't find any stream hitting your hand, because the tea is moving the tea leaf. The tea leaf isn't zooming through the tea is moving it. So this invisible part of space, that dark matter, that 96% they don't know what it is, that's what moves things and creates planets and stars and galaxies. And so when they interpreted it, they said, okay, well, there's no ether space because we didn't feel any current, when we use light instead of hands on the Earth to see if light changes speed. Well, it didn't, because, at that point, there was no relative speed or density to the ether space around Earth. Earth is being moved by an invisible fluid, if you wish. And
that's right. And this is interesting, Doc, because Close talked about this morning. He says now what they're postulating is that black matter is consciousness. And he said it's the consciousness that causes the reality to take place, as they saw with the slit experience, that without consciousness there was no reality, there was no physical matter. And that he said that the first three, we live in the first five dimensions. The first is depth, width, height. Fourth is time, space. The fifth is the Higgs field, or the wormholes. These are in the chaos because they're all part of the time thing. But then the sixth through the 12th dimension is the second heaven that Paul was taken up into. And the 13th dimension, according to these physicists, is the first heaven where God resides. And so it's really kind of interesting when you start dwelling into this stuff, especially, remember last week when we were talking with you guys, Doug, I talked about how there was no reality without consciousness. And now they're saying that black matter in space is the consciousness, and that's where the human souls reside, and that's what holds everything together, because Jesus is there, because the universal consciousness is there, which is God himself. And then remember, Jesus said, through me all things are held together, and it's exactly what your guest is saying tonight. Is just that this consciousness is holding things together, and Einstein never even had any idea that was going on.
It's interesting. You'll see in Scripture, in the book of Revelation, that this earth and the universe we know, the heavens and the earth, will pass away in this great fervent heat in the future after the millennial reign.
That's right.
And a new earth and a new heaven will replace it. Now, to me, this sounds like our universe is being closed down or absorbed into a higher energy density universe around us, the hot one, at least one level above us or perhaps further. So you can see that this state that we're in here is a temporary state. It's going to change. And you can almost look at it when you say consciousness is the fifth dimension, or other dimensions out there. The upper levels are consciousness in the dark matter. It's like we are in a virtual reality in a computer simulation somewhere, and what is outside is real. What is inside is not. It's to us it's important, but it's not real.
I got to tell you guys, listen to the two of you. I just want to say, huh? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, really.
Well, but Stan, Doug, what Stan is saying is so everybody's starting to get this now. The physicists are starting to realize that without consciousness, there could be no reality, and without that black matter holding everything together, which is the consciousness of God, there can be no reality. And he's right. We're in an order of chaos down here, and it's like Stan said it exactly right. It's like we're in a doggone computer simulation right now in a holodeck. And the real world is outside of this, and it's in a different dimension, and there's no such thing as time where God resides in the eternal now. It's just he's always been there. It's pretty cool when you start to look at it, because it really just justifies and validates, not that the Bible needs to be validated, but what it does, it really shows that we can have really serious faith in Jesus Christ and in the Word of God, and that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, because with him there is no time. Everything is just in the eternal now with him right now. Isn't that right, Stan?
Well, it is. I've often reckoned or said that, like, God is a projectionist sitting in a room, and he's got a circular carousel, those little slide carousels, and those slides are moments in time in the universe. And since he sits outside of time, he can sit there and he can change a slide here, which will affect all the other slides after that, because he's in control of time. And it's, somebody asked me one time what I thought about Doctor Who and the time travel that he did in his cabinet. And I said, you know what? If a human here, ever did invent a time-traveling device, if there were no God, then the moment he steps into time, there always was a God. And think about that while you're having a glass of beer or something.
Wow.
But no, I like Doctor Who. I've been watching Doctor Who for 30 years. I mean, it's gotten kind of weird here lately with some of the stuff they do. But I think people just need to think through this stuff, because here's how I always tell people, Stan. I always say it's kind of like God's. The second heaven's playing a movie. God's in charge of the 13th heaven. The second heaven's playing a movie, and Lucifer's kind of in charge of what's going on and all that, in that weird field of chaos. And he's playing this movie down here because he's kind of taken over the earth. But God still has the authority to make him change the film or to change the slides and to change your life. And so it's like exactly like you said. It's so funny that we're all starting to think the same way about this hologram that we're in, and we're starting to understand it. And so I think that these globalists, these people, these folks that are the Satan worshipers and all that stuff, that a lot of this ancient knowledge was passed down through the eons of time. They understand how a lot of this stuff works, but they don't want us to wake up and change the matrix that we're in and change the frequency we're in. And realize that we can have a world of love and of peace and of harmony, but we've got to change this way we look at things, and we have to stop looking at the negative all the time and all this negative energy.
Well, I suppose that's one way to look at it. I certainly think that we need to be in God's kingdom, and of course Jesus is the doorway, and so that's going to be the ultimate solution to the problem.
Yeah, okay, wow. Well, Stan, on your show images page, I was looking at that, and I'll tell you, you've got some pretty interesting selections. And folks, you can go to StanDeyo.com. And Tuesdays with Stan, our regular guest. I'll tell you what, the real Indiana Jones, as I like to call him. But the show images page, which is right on the top right at StanDeyo.com, you've got the Arctic Ice Sea cover. I wanted to ask you a question, because here it is, and I know there's seemingly more important things to talk about, but there's two things I really want to hit with you, that and what's this face, Soleimani. But with respect to the winter that we're having here, especially up north, when you look at the Arctic Ice cover, what's this telling us, man? I mean, what are we looking at here?
Well, we've talked about this before, that the North Pole area, the Arctic, seem to be heating up, while the Antarctic, the South Pole area, seem to be cooling down and getting more ice buildup. And there are conflicting reports. I mean, Holly's just been researching this for a project she's on. She's working on a new book, and it's difficult to get consensus from the various scientists and organizations that are measuring the ice at the South Pole, because some say it's lower than the normal, others say it's more than the normal, and they're saying it's the South Pole sea ice, which means the ice which is over the sea but not over the South Pole landmass. And, you know, Holly has found that there's a volcano or a series of volcanoes that have occurred down there, and there's one that's apparently active, the scientists have found, which is heating up the South Pole and increasing the melt. But what you're seeing on the website here, on the show images page, there's two images there. If you click on the images, you get the actual image, and the images there where the kind of orange line is shows you the average or median line where the sea ice should be, say, on the North Pole. And you'll see that, okay, it's shrinking back from that. There's not so much sea ice at the North Pole as there is on the median line. But if you go to the Antarctic one, which is the second one, and click on that, you'll see that it's over the amount of the orange line in most of the, like the right-hand side of the picture and part of the left-hand side. And there's only a little bit of the area where it's below the norm in those areas. So the ice pack is actually increasing, and this is data from yesterday. I mean, this is very current data and imaging, which is done real time up here in Boulder, Colorado. And then if you look at the third graph there, it shows you, you click on the picture, it'll show you the North and South Pole sea ice covers, and what they call the extent. And you'll see that there's a dark line that is the average in both of those cases. And at the South Pole, you'll see that the blue line and the dotted line, which are, you know, this year and last year, those are way above the median for the South Pole, but way below the median for the North Pole. And I keep getting back to why is the North Pole magnetic pole split now? Well, we have two North Poles and a stretched South Pole. And why is the North Pole moving at twice the velocity, its drift, twice the speed of that of the South Pole? There are things going on electrically that I think are affecting this ice deposit rate. And even though there's volcano there heating up the ice in the Antarctic, it doesn't explain the melting at the North Pole so much. I think we're seeing a transfer of heat from the southern regions of the planet up to the northern regions, the Antarctic, by what's called the Thomson effect in electricity. Anyway, that's the end of my rave on that. But it did bother me, and Soleimani is the other thing on my radar at the moment.
Yes, and it's interesting. Last week you talked about him. This week and on Sunday on Fox News, on Sunday I saw a couple of segments about. Well, he's the guy. He's the guy that's pushing back ISIS. He's the guy that's pushing back ISIS in Iraq. And oh boy, I mean, let's celebrate. So you called that very.
There's trouble in Yemen at the moment. There are terrorist forces pushing on the American-backed regime in Yemen, and when you look into who's doing it, it's Iran who is funding the terrorists that are trying to overthrow the government in Yemen. And it's Iran that's got Soleimani in there in Iraq helping them to overthrow ISIS so that they can have the Iranian version of what they want for the Muslim nations in Iraq and in Syria and in Yemen. And the political analysts are saying, Iran seems to be the dominant figure in the Middle East scenario at the moment. In the panorama of nations, it seems to be the one that's collecting them all together. And I predict that it will collect 4 other major Muslim Arab nations to itself to form a confederation in the near future. There may have to be some other serious events take place, like Israel striking Iran and coming to heads with Soleimani and his Quds force. But the next year, maybe next year and a half, I think are going to be extremely busy in world events, especially around the Middle East. Good. So keep watching Soleimani, and watch for any hints in the press about rebuilding Solomon's Temple up on the Temple Mount. Now, in February last year, and maybe this year, I think that anyway, there was a sign put up on the front of the Temple Mount by the city of Jerusalem for tourists, saying, pointing up to the Temple Mount, saying, "See the site of Solomon's Temple." Of course, it's pointing at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and of course, the Arab world, Muslim world, are very upset about that. But with the events last year in Turkey, with the news there saying we ought to build a Temple of Solomon off, to the right of the dome and in the wooded area to the north of the Temple Mount, and let the Jews have worship there. With them saying that, keep watching for pushes to build Solomon's Temple in the Temple Mount, but not on the dais where the Dome of the Rock is. Wow. I mean, and watch Alexis Tsipras, the Prime Minister of Greece. He's over with cap in hand with Angela Merkel, or with the Germans, saying, "Look, we want you to release, some of our cash flow so that we can pay our debt by generating, income here." And he's apparently coming forward with an economic plan, which should be announced tomorrow, the next day after their meeting, that will show him to be a wonder worker, with the economy. So I keep an eye on that guy too for things that are going to be happening in the Western, or the old Western leg of the Roman Empire. Boy, what a prophetic time.
Indeed, and folks, Stan has underneath go to the show images page on StanDeyo.com, and underneath the picture of Soleimani, of course, 2 Samuel 12:24 and 25 is scripture there that's pretty suggestive of current events, or at least what leads to current events, as well as with respect to Tsipras, the Prime Minister of Greece, 1 Kings 3:12. And, well, boy, prophetic times indeed. I mean, yeah, we're in for a busy, I think a very busy summer, and as we progress into these world events. CERN notwithstanding, but certainly with the geopolitics, and I don't know. It just looks crazy. Anything aside from what we've just talked about on your radar that you think, man, this is, we got to cover this because people need to know?
No, I think we've pretty well covered what needed to be done. The news runs in waves. Sometimes it's really heavy and full of goodies, and at the moment I think it's kind of minimal. I'm going to be curious to see what caused that crash over that airliner over in Europe.
They do
have the black box recovered, so we should get some kind of an answer from that shortly. Hopefully they'll tell us the truth about it.
Yeah. Well, that's always a hope. Well, all right, Stan. I just want to apologize for the mix-up, and a lot of it was out of our hands. I don't know what's going on with our connection with Skype. I do know that BTR is changing some things, and whenever they do change things, it's usually an interesting experience. That's not to say it's them, but it's the Skype has been really problematic with us and giving us long delays. But I want to thank you very much for your gift of time, and okay, buddy. I mean, I'll tell you.
All right. All righty. Well, thank you, guys.
God bless you, and our best to Holly and the furry ones. God bless. Thanks, Stan. All right, folks. That was Stan Deyo from StanDeyo.com. Tuesday regular, and sorry for the abbreviated segment tonight. Ted, I got to tell you, man, pretty prophetic times. And Stan Deyo is really one of the smartest guys I know in terms of physics and stuff. Man, I don't know. This CERN thing bothers me, but that aircraft crash too, Ted. I don't know what you make of that. I have a bad feeling, given the fact that this was so close to the, not that close, but close enough to the equinox, and I'm just wondering if there's other world events that are taking place that this could be some sort of a sacrifice, if you will. And I know that sounds bizarre, but is it really that bizarre to think of it in that fashion? I don't know. Okay, am I talking to myself? Did I lose you, Ted? All right. Looks like we might have briefly lost Ted here. Let me just take a look. Yeah, I do believe we did. We're going to get Ted back, and perhaps we will be running once Ted comes back. Folks, I want to thank you very much for your patience tonight. Unexpected things happened prior to the show, immediately prior to the show, and of course that sent things sideways. So everything we were going to do kind of had to be shelved in place of what we're doing now. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it, right? But very interesting information from both Ted and from Stan. And we're going to wait for Ted to catch back with us here, and also see if his guest from this morning would come on as well. Meanwhile, let me just say this. I was looking at the Daily Mail. Now, some people don't like this source, Daily Mail, out of the UK, and I happened upon an article from March 13th, 2015. Now, that's a full month ago, obviously. Or not quite. I'm sorry. 2 weeks ago, March 13th, 2015. What I saw from this, and folks, I don't know whether you saw this at the time this came out. This was published, but the title of this is "The Blood Pumped from a Still Beating Heart is the Purest Form of Energy," and that's a quote. And then the subtitle is "Inside the Horrific Mexican Satanic Black Mass with Live Sacrifices That Shocked Disgusted Tourists." And of course, warning graphic content. And what caught my attention on this Daily Mail article, dailymail.com. And again, this is from March 13th. It was published then and updated on that day. What caught my attention was you've got, this is an article on the satanic cult, the satanic practices that are taking place in Mexico. And I'm looking at this article, and I'm thinking, okay, first of all, as listeners out there, would you even have, first of all, how do you even, what do you do? Call your travel agent and say, hey, you know what? I want to book a cruise or book a trip to I'm trying to look and see where this was exactly in Mexico, Veracruz, Mexico. Yeah, I want to book a trip to Veracruz, Mexico, and I understand they're having satanic black masses there with live sacrifices. So can you get us a couple of round trip tickets to Veracruz, Mexico? I mean, is that what you do? You wake up one day, because the video does show the video shows these tourists, these American tourists or Western tourists anyway, talking about what they saw at this particular event. And one of the American visitors said, and this is in the bullet of the one of the bullet points of the article, the next step would be human sacrifice. Some have questioned, others have questioned whether they've done it already. And this twisted cult, this is the UK's Daily Mail's words now, believe smearing blood of sacrificed animals can save lives, and used it to pledge souls to Satan. Why do I bring this up now? And here's the reason. And I think it's really important for people to really look at what's going on here worldwide. This goes beyond what our current belief system is and what our comfort zone is. You're looking at a situation here in terms of the satanic element taking place. What's going on right now in Mexico and elsewhere that is active. I mean, has become so active right now. And if you look at this particular event, and I'm going to just go into this, highlight the event because it's pretty gruesome. But if you just take this event and think about what is going on elsewhere throughout the world, realize and take in what Russ Dizdar has talked about, and understand that there are sacrifices to Satan, blood sacrifices to Satan, and you've got Western tourists that attended these black masses, these rituals, and saying, wait a minute, it's very possible they've already sacrificed humans. Is that too much of a stretch or a jump, for example, to think that there could be blood sacrifices elsewhere? That a plane crash, like that plane crash in the Alps, and I know, look, we don't know what happened, but MH17 or anything else, in addition to being something geopolitical, is there another element behind it? I guess that's what I'm looking for. What's the motive of certain things? The UK, the Daily Mail article I'm referencing, states that horrified tourists have told of their shock and disgust after attending a devil-worshipping black mass in Mexico. They looked on as chickens and goats were sacrificed before their fresh blood was poured over the participants who pledged their souls to Satan. You just don't wander into this particular ceremony like you would in a church and sit in the pew and say, hey, I'm here, or don't say anything and just going to be a spectator. No, this is a hands-on type thing. You're not there by accident. So, having said all
Doug,
that...
are you back? I hear you, Doug?
Yeah, man. Hey, what'd you do, hang up on me, Ted? I mean, my goodness.
No, I've been sitting here listening to this show, and it's been awful, this thing on Satanism, but you're absolutely right. We've got to get Robert Steele on. I don't know where Joe is.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah.
Steele's at his house waiting for us.
Okay. Let me see what I can do here.
But you're absolutely right. What you're talking about with the satanic sacrifice and Russ Dizdar and everybody else, it goes back to the frequency of the blood. It goes back to the salt content of the blood. It goes back to the interdimensional frequencies are in the blood, that the soul is in the blood, and the soul's interdimensional, the consciousness is interdimensional, and that's why they use the blood of humans to help maintain their power over this hologram they're in and the illusion that they've created. In fact, I'm going to come back on. I've been working on this. If you wonder why I know so much about this, I've been working on an entire program for you for like 45 minutes. So we're going to go into this in detail and all the different dimensions, why they do it, why they use the blood sacrifice and everything else. It's just not finished yet, and I don't want to give people incomplete information on it. But I'm almost there. I've almost got the whole. It's like 14 pages already.
Really? Yeah. I mean. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, but you're absolutely right. This blood sacrifice stuff is going on, and if we can get Robert David Steele on here, if I can find out where Joe went to, we can get him hooked up and get him started on the air with us.
That's in progress as we speak. We're getting that done. So that's in progress. But this whole thing here with the Satanistic practices. Well, like I said, you've got to make this. I mean, people that went to Veracruz, these American tourists, these people that were engaged in this. You've got to seek this out. So that tells me, frankly, that this is actually worldwide, and these people are not. They're not newbies to this. Anyway, in the meantime, Ted, go ahead and hit another news article. Let me work on something here. Just go ahead and take the show for a moment while I work on something here.
All right. Let me go. I'm going to jump on the Satan stuff for a second. I'm going to tell you some of the things I've already discovered on this. What we have here, the eternal now is where the consciousness of God resides. It's beyond time, beyond space. It's the home of God. The whole thing about this is this stuff started way, way, way back in with the ancient mystery religions, all the way back in Egypt, and the Druids and all of these people that were all an offshoot of all of this. And what people don't understand is that the home of the first three dimensions that we have, and I was telling this to Stan a few minutes ago, is the depth, width, and height. Fourth is time space. The fifth is the Higgs field of the wormholes. This is the dimension of time and chaos that we're in. And what happens is when they maintain these human sacrifices, and they're constantly doing this, they put this static charge into the atmosphere to maintain the chaos and to maintain low frequency on the planet. The hate, the fear, the greed, the bitterness, the anger, all of those things which keep us at a lower energy state. This lower energy state is where these demons and this satanic stuff and all of this evil stuff resides. That's where we always have another war. We always have something else going on. Now, this all happened and started back, thousands of years ago, and now the Sabbatean Satanist Frankists who got started in the 1600s, 1700s, they've taken it to a whole different level, with their money magic and taking over the planet by making their money out of nothing, and also their sex magic rituals in which they do all of this stuff. Now, when you get saved, when you get born again, your soul is actually connected into this second heaven, into the 13th heaven, the 13th dimension, by your cord of living water, also known as your silver cord, and this connects you to God Almighty. We have you have to look at the world as hyperdimensional physics, and it's like Stan was saying a few minutes ago. It's almost like we're in a computer simulation, like the Matrix, and we're being told what we're supposed to believe and told how we're supposed to act. And they're using these souls as money, as in trade in the last days, it says in the book of Revelation. And the reason they're doing that is they're trying to maintain their hold on hyperspace and what they're doing. This all started with the Church of Rome, with the pagan infusion with Constantine. It started with all the fertility festivals they brought into the Christian church, how they brought in the Easter services and all this other thing with worshiping the Asherah poles, on and on and on and on. And so what happens is Jesus, who's also known as Emmanuel, also known as God, is the knowledge, and he's in the eternal now in the 13th dimension, and he holds everything together through him. And that's what we want to talk about the next time we come on the show, Doug. We want to go into detail on this because I've got this whole thing put together, but it's in notes right now, and I need to write all of it out. But the powers of the second heaven and the spirit world and the powers of hyperdimension and space are being held down by these human sacrifices, by the shedding of the blood, because, again, the genetic frequency of the humans is in the blood, the salt's in the blood, all of the components of the soul and the spirit are in the blood. That's why they use the blood in these sacrifices, because remember, once a person is dead, their blood is useless. It cannot even be used for transfusions anymore, and that's what's going on right now as far as these sacrifices and these child abductions all over the planet. And that's why I always say when I'm on the Power Hour and I'm hosting that show, what's okay with Bohemian Grove to anybody who looks at the pictures of a 40-foot statue of Moloch burning a human being in effigy? Now, you know, when we talk to Russ Dizdar, he says they're using live human beings for that sacrifice. I don't know that. I haven't been there. I have no interest in going there. I don't want to be around all that evil like that. But the point is, the leaders of our country, the leaders of the world, and all these guys that are involved in all of this filth and all of this evil, they use this to maintain control of this holodeck that we've been put into. And people are always saying, well, why is that? Why did God make it this way? I can't answer why God did what God did as far as the holodeck we're in, but I do know this. He's given us tremendous ability in this fantasy world he put us in. He gave us the ability to control the very fabric of space-time. A few years ago, I did a seminar at Southeastern University, and I was asked to come in by one of the professors there and teach a few classes. And I told the kids there, I said, what do you want to talk about? I said, let me teach you how to control the very fabric of space-time. And they looked at me and they said, well, how do you do that? So we did an entire lecture on that, and it went over extremely well. It was just the basics of what we're talking about tonight as far as hyperdimensions and the space and the second heaven and the 13th dimension and the first 5 dimensions. And what's interesting about this is these kids didn't even understand how the Bible says the power of life and death is in the tongue. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And all the affirmations that you need to do as a Christian, which we've talked about many times on your show before, Doug.
Very interesting. And, you know, going back to what you said about the blood, I just... Yeah, you know, this is just so critical to me because I think what we're seeing here is a ramping up of things, and
well, they're losing control. They're losing control of the hollow matrix. Remember what Dave Hodges said. He called it a tipping point. Once it reaches 10% of the population, they can't stop it. So every time they have a revolution against them at 10%, they have to try to prevent that from happening, either with another false flag or ramping up the human sacrifice.
Oh man! All right, wow. Ted, I just got a note here. Apparently, Joe does not have the correct phone number. I don't know exactly how he got that, or the number is not for Robert. Now here we've got about 30 minutes left of the program. What we can do is have him on for a full hour if he's up to that. I'm going to give you the option.
I'll tell you what I can do. I can text Joe his phone number again. I can do that right now because Robert's there waiting for me because I gave him a word that he's going on tonight. So I hate doing that. But I will text that to Joe. If Joe's listening, let him know that a text is coming to him right now. I don't think Joe's awake. I think, bless his heart, I think he's been too.
No,
I think he's been.
He's in fact, no. I know that he will get that phone number and then reconnect or connect. Well, at least that's the At least that's the note I've got here in front of me. So I have to apologize for this. A number of things happened right before the show that were unintended. You know how things go when things go south right before a show. So we're trying to hold this together. So yeah, go ahead if you can text that number. And
he has it, Joe. He has it right now.
Okay.
I just sent it to him, and I'm sure Robert's probably listening, thinking we're all a bunch of nuts.
Well,
and,
yeah,
but
exactly.
Robert, we're trying to call you right now. I just texted your phone number over to Joe, so I'm not going to give it out over the air. He was very clear about me not giving out his phone number, and I don't want to do that, especially to the audience as large as what you guys have.
That'd be fun. Hey,
but I want to bring him on tonight. But like you said, you can bring him back for another hour or two. That's fun too. Because the thing about because you're going to really, once you get him started though, you're going to be really impressed with this guy. He really is sharp. I mean, he's like the nonfiction reader and book reviewer for Amazon. I mean, this guy's really, he's got it together. He's got a really good mind on his shoulders.
Well, that's good. I mean, okay.
All right. Well, let's go back to the news stories while we're waiting for Joe to connect with him.
Okay, let's do that. You're next. You're up. How's that for passing the buck, huh?
No, that's okay. I love passing the buck with you guys. I always have. This is where the one good thing about it is they know we're not scripted. I remember years ago. Let me tell you a funny story before I start back on the news. I was doing I had worked with Pastor Rod Parsley. He's out of Columbus, Ohio, and I had met him on Daystar TV. This is back about 10, 12 years ago, and I was doing a TV show there with Daystar on the program called Celebration. And we had a huge response. I was there with Dr. Contreras, who owns Oasis of Hope. He was on, and I was on. We were doing like a tag team event as far as answering questions. I was doing nutrition. He was doing the medical thing. And it was a national show. We were answering all these questions and had call-ins. It was live. And so after the show, Pastor Rod Parsley walks up to me and goes, can you help me? And this guy's a huge evangelist. You may or may not have heard of him. And I said, well, I really can't help you right now, but I can give you one of my books. I said, what's the problem? I said, I've got to catch an airplane. He goes, well, my cholesterol's high. It's like, it's like at 500, my triglycerides are over 1,000. And I laughed, and I didn't know how big this guy was. He was like at that time he was like the third largest TV evangelist in the world. And I laughed, and he goes, well, why are you laughing? And I said, cholesterol. I said, I thought you were going to ask me something hard. Brain cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer. That's hard. I said, cholesterol, really? He goes, they've got like 8 drugs they want to put me on. And I said, no, we don't have to do any of that. And so I said, read this book. And so about 4 months later, he calls me up, and his staff does, and they said, we want you on the show. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, his cholesterol's at 200, his triglycerides are perfect. He's lost 37 pounds and dropped 13 inches in his waist. That's a lot. Yeah. And he said he feels great. He said he's got more energy than he knows what to do with. And what happened is we went on the show, and I'll never forget this. The night before we were to be on the show together, he meets with me, right? And he gives me a script. And that's why I was joking about our show's not scripted with you. And he goes, this is the script for tomorrow for the show. And I said, you're going to make me read a script that you guys wrote? Are you kidding me? I said, why don't we just talk about your 37-pound weight loss, 13 inches, and all of the cholesterol stuff, and it's only 27 minutes or whatever with the commercial. I said, we're going to be done in seconds. I said, if we read a script, it's going to be all stymied. It's going to sound like we're reading a script. And he goes, okay, so he just threw the script away. And it ended up being one of the biggest shows he'd ever done as far as helping him to raise money for his nonprofit. And so it was interesting, but that was like, gosh, that's been about 10 years ago, the last time we were on with him. But it was amazing that the information that we were able to get out on the size of that TV show at that time and everything else. Has Robert got on with us yet?
No, I just received a text that he's getting a recording at that phone number. Now, I said recheck the text on the phone to make sure that you've got the correct number, and then have someone else dial it for you if necessary. So we're still working on that. You know what? It is what it is. I mean, look, folks. Can you tell? I mean, we are not putting on any airs here. Okay,
this is not a script.
No, of course not. And you're really a good sport for coming on and being with me. I really appreciate it. So we're still working on this whole conundrum here with that. I'm sure you did text the right or proper number, and I'm sure
I'm checking it right now myself. I'm checking it. It starts with 571, but that's as much as I'm giving out. And then it's
yeah, it's fine. That's fine.
No, I got it right. He's got the right number, unless okay. Robert gave up on us, but I don't think he did. He's probably wondering what in the world happened to all of us on the show tonight. But that's okay. Let's go back to the news story.
I am too.
Keep trying to get Robert on.
That's right. Okay.
But Robert,
right.
one good thing about it is we have no commercials. So if you do come on with us right now, you'll get a full half hour.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go back to the news stories. Let's see. We covered the news already. We talked about the extra news. I believe we've already covered all that. That Israel and the U.S. to boycott the UN session on the Gaza conflict. I don't know if you saw that or not. Russia today did this. The Israeli and American representatives boycotted because they said there was no legitimacy in Israel violating human rights, even though they've killed over 2,000 people in the last 50 days of 2014 in Palestine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
here's another interesting. Here's another interesting. Japan's Pacific Rim job, building a 250-mile anti-tsunami wall to create jobs. Well, I've got a news flash for you, Japan. If you want to do something really, really nice, why don't you pour a bunch of stinking concrete on Fukushima and stop that garbage from pumping all that water into the aquifer into the ocean? Maybe instead of building a 250-mile wall.
Why aren't they doing that? And see, that's been my question. As soon as that happened, if Fukushima happened, my question to you and to everyone else is, why didn't the world rally and stop this catastrophic, this absolutely catastrophic event of Fukushima? Why didn't the world rally? Why didn't the UN gather and say, okay, we've got a problem here? And why did they let it go so long?
It's still going. I mean, they're still pumping, tens of thousands of gallons of radioactive seawater into the Pacific Ocean right now. It's still sending up plumes. I don't understand it, Doug. I don't understand why they couldn't just encase that whole stupid area into about, pour it right out into the ocean and everything else, and just pour the concrete on everything like they did in Chernobyl. I don't understand. The Russians went in there and turned that thing into a giant catacomb. I think they covered it up with like 100 feet of concrete. I don't understand this. Maybe unless it's already into the seafloor aquifer and into all the gas vents down into the coral beds. I don't know. But to me, it seems as though that they haven't done very much to try to contain this. I know they've lost a couple of workers, and out of that aircraft carrier out there that was off the coast out there, it ended up getting hit with that radiation plume, and a lot of those guys got really sick from that. So I don't understand why in the world that this is still going on, and it's been years now, unless it's intentionally being done by the globalists to destroy the fisheries of the Pacific Ocean. I don't understand why they would even do it. Here's the thing that really irritates me with all of this, okay? I really like this hologram we're in. I really enjoy it here, okay? I don't know what they think they're going to get from now on if they destroy this planet. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense to me. I mean, if they kill everybody on the planet, are we going to have this another big reset? They're going to start all over again with their druid worship and stuff like that, like they did thousands of years ago. I don't know what they're planning on doing, but the sad part about this is I know it's all about killing God's creation. I know the only thing that's real here on this planet is our consciousness and our soul, and I know they trade in our souls, and they basically have something to do with the interdimensional transfers that take place. I'm doing that whole research paper on that. I'm going to figure this out to the best of my ability, and we're going to do a whole show on this, at least for 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to talk about the eternal now and all these different dimensions, but I don't know why they think they can just destroy everything and it's supposed to be okay. I really don't know.
Yeah. I'm looking at this, and I had somebody tell me one time that they want to essentially destroy the northern hemisphere and live in the southern hemisphere. But I mean, I'm not exactly certain how that would work. Okay, I mean, practically, realistically, but you look at some of the big families settling in the southern hemisphere. That's really interesting to me that they chose the southern hemisphere over the northern hemisphere. But anyway, having said all that, let me get your take, Ted. I've been dying to ask you about this. Off air, actually, but I'm going to do it on air because I'm going to get your take on this, okay? And I'm not, putting you in a pigeonhole here because we've talked about similar things, but Angela Merkel, depending on how you want to, Angela Merkel. We were talking yesterday about her being the illegitimate offspring of Adolf Hitler. Now, have you?
We talked about that last week. Remember?
Yeah, we did, didn't we? I guess. Okay.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
All right. So, what was I thinking? All right. Maybe there's somebody else.
Well, no. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know one thing. I know that somebody. I read. Deagle said the other day that Arnold Schwarzenegger is a Lebensborn kid, and that's why he still wears the death head belt buckle. For the SS. So, I mean, I don't really know what's going on with any of this mess. You know what I'm saying? All I can do is just try to sit there and kind of speculate like you guys are. But I do know that, like Russ Dizdar said, that unbelievable evil was unleashed when the Nazis started going into these different dimensions and contacting these entities and getting this advanced knowledge from them and involving all of us in their little escapades. And what's also interesting is I was reading that book by Henry Macau. And and he said that he thinks that that Hitler lost that war on purpose. And we talked about this last week too, with Bormann, and how Bormann was giving away all the secrets of the Nazi troop movements, etc., during the last couple of years of war to the Russians, and he was shown to be a Russian spy after the war. So there were all kinds of things going on under the scenes over there, and it all goes back to the Rothschild banking cartel and the banking families that run the world, and how they continue to control everything through their money magic and through their manipulation of the very fabric of reality that we know on this planet.
Well, I guess all of this, what we're seeing right now, and I'm trying to get the big picture of this. And I'm not trying to be overly simplistic, but I'm looking at the big picture. I'm thinking, okay, obviously we know that this was this whole thing was started many decades, centuries ago. We can take it back to the garden, but the bottom line here is what we're seeing, at least in my view, in my simplistic view, is we're seeing the closing quarter, the final quarter of this game play out, and we're seeing the real stuff happening, the visible stuff. And for example, Merkel. The reason I brought Merkel up is because look at where the EU is right now, and look at her position in Germany, and look at the effect. If this is all true, this had to be planned and staged and choreographed just right. And none of this is by accident. This chaos is not by accident by any means. And we know we talk about that, but it just astounds me to look at all these little conspiracies and understand that none of these conspiracies happened. At least the majority of them didn't happen by accident. So you're exactly right in your assessment. And I think back to the first time you and I spoke, the very first time we talked about all of this, and a couple of emails I got were people disbelieving everything. But now, how can you disbelieve any of this in the larger sense when you look at the big picture? So yeah.
Well, you're exactly right, Doug. And what's interesting to me is this: when people really start digging into this crap, which is what it is, this New World Order crap. I mean, I could say a much harsher word, but I'm not going to. With all this filth and this human sacrifice, this bloodletting and this blood drinking, and all of this filthy pedophilia and sodomy and all this filth, everything is designed to turn the creation that God gave us upside down. That's what it's designed to do. Apparently, these guys are hacked off. They're living in the hologram with us, and they're trying to ruin it. Okay, I kind of like the hologram. Okay, I kind of like being here. At least it gives us something to do. And we get to see a lot of really pretty stuff. And plus I live in Florida, so I really like the hologram. And so the problem these guys have is they hate everything God stands for. It started with the Sabbateans in the 1600s. It led with the Frankists in the 1700s, and then it turned right back around with the Rothschild banking cartel in the late 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. It took in the War of 1812. Was fought over putting a central bank in the United States because the British Empire had already been taken over by the Rothschild banking cartel, controlling by the Catholic Church, and now the entire Masonic lodges are being taken over. And so we've got like a triple-headed monster here that's doing this. And when I first started reading this stuff, it's like this whole research thing that I'm doing on the soul now and interdimensional transfers. What I found fascinating about all of this stuff when I started doing all this stuff and looking at all this stuff, I didn't want to believe any of it, Doug. I thought this is some whacked out mess. First time I read David Icke, I thought, I agree with 15-20%. The first time I looked at his stuff. Then it was 50%. Then it was 70%. Now I'm like at 90% with Icke, and I'm thinking, my gosh, if you just change the reptilian alien off of Icke's thing and you put fallen angel in and you start looking at these interdimensional entities, it all starts making more and more sense with Icke. And now we know the moon's got something going on up there. And so we got all this crazy stuff that's happening, and we're starting to wake up. The problem is they don't want us to wake up. They don't want us to wake up. They want us to stay in a sleep mode, and they don't want us to know that we can actually control the very fabric of space-time by the words that we speak, by the actions that we speak, by the prayers that we give, by the life that we lead, and by the confessions that we make, and by the goals that we set, and by the dreams that we have. And people don't understand that. If you control the very fabric of space-time, you can change this planet literally within a few weeks. if we could get the masses to wake up. But that's why they calcified the pineal gland. That's why they wanted to cut the cord of living water to us, to the 5th, 13th dimension. They don't want us to know what's going on in the supernatural. And if you're not a Christian now, after you've heard Doug's show all of these years, if you've been listening to this, we'll pray for you right now. Let you pray the sinner's prayer. Because the truth of the matter is, without Jesus Christ, without God in your life, without all of this tied together in the universal consciousness that we know that is God, unless you understand all of this stuff, you are lost as a doggone pipe wrench in a vacuum cleaner. You have no idea what in the world you're supposed to be doing down there. And see, the problem is that's the way it is in this world. If we do not know who we are through Christ, if we do not know who we are through God Almighty in the 13th dimension, how in the world are we supposed to continue to live and survive if this thing starts falling apart at the seams? I mean, we're going to capitulate immediately. We're going to say, okay, you want me to take that mark of the beast? Where do you want to put this thing? You want to stamp it here? You want to stamp it here? And we're not even going to consider it. We're not going to. If we can't stand in the aggregate against drinking fluoridated water, how are we supposed to stand against the aggregate we can't buy and sell anymore? If we can't stand in the aggregate and say, I'm not going to take all these statin drugs that destroy my brain and my liver and my kidneys, how are you supposed to stand in the aggregate when they come to your house knocking at the door? I mean, what do we think is going to happen? This is going to go happy, happy? Revelation does not say it's going to be happy, happy, Doug. It's going to get worse and worse, and we need to understand that as Christians. And if we don't understand that, what's going to happen is we're going to find ourselves in a really bad place where we don't want to be, living where we don't want to be, doing what we don't want to do, if we even stay alive when we get put into the FEMA camps. Because, God, me and you probably have a giant X marked on us, going out here and telling all the people all this stuff all the time. Or they're going to say we're all just nuts. They're going to lock us away and put us in a padded cell and make us go away.
Exactly. And, Ted, did you see, by the way, France had they're considering or passing legislation to make conspiracy theories, whatever they would classify as conspiracy theories, illegal and a criminal offense. I mean, jailable offense. Did you see that? Did we talk about that? Did we?
I haven't seen that one yet. But who gives a rat's bottom what the French do? I've been to France so many times, and last year my little girl wanted me to take her to France. And forgive me for saying rat's bottom, but that's what I think of the French. I've been to Paris so many times. Those people are so mean. The French people hate being French people. They're so mean. They're just mean. I think they're all chronically hungover because they drink so much wine. But they're always in a really foul mood. Now, when you get into the outer countryside, the French people are really, really nice. But the Parisians are awful. And I told my daughter, she goes, I want you to take me to Paris, Dad. She's like 11 years old. I said, oh, gosh, I don't want to drive to Paris. I said, they got a real strict speed limit. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get stuck over there with a ticket. So we drove over there, and then she says, Dad, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I said, I know, it's just another big, dirty, nasty city. They're proposing tax rates of 100%, for heaven's sakes, to other people. People are leaving their hand over fist. It's a giant communist country is what it is, and it's falling apart at the seams. And
yeah.
So for the French people to say they're going to ban conspiracy theories, that doesn't surprise me one bit, Doug.
The reason I brought that up, and the reason that kind of struck me as being important is I can see this leaching into that mindset leaching into the EU and of course the Western countries and even coming to the United States. I mean, look at what's been talked about here in the U.S. in terms of so-called conspiracy theories that ended up to be true, but people are saying, well, we have to curtail this. And even George W. came out on after 9/11 and said, we can't have any conspiracy. No, we can't have any conspiracy theories about 9/11.
They're what was his favorite line? You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. God.
Oh, man.
And I know the guy, and he's the nicest person you've ever met when you talk to him individually. He's really nice, and his wife's really nice, and she's much prettier in person than she is on TV. And it's just so funny because he was so cordial, so nice to us when we talked to him. And I only was able to spend, just a few minutes with him. And his dad and his mom I know really, really well. And I met his dad and his brother one other time. So I know all the Bush clan. And they're all really, really, really nice people when you talk to them. I mean, you would never think that you would. And it was so funny. The last time when I met George Jr., I was actually awake. And, I don't know if I told you this or not. When I met him, I told him, I said, I want to thank you for increasing the M1 money supply during the 2008 financial crisis. And he looked at me like he had no idea what I was talking about. I thought, God, he's clueless. And I said, you increased the amount of money in circulation so that we wouldn't have so we could, completely stop the the failure of all these major banks and banking institutions and AIG and all the rest of it. He goes, oh yeah, that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? That just shows he had nothing to do with that. That was the Federal Reserve that did that, and that they did that as a stopgap measure because the entire infrastructure of the banking system was about to collapse back in 2008. And a lot of us think there's a high probability of it happening again in 2015 on a 7-year cycle, but I don't know. It may not happen for another 10 years. They certainly are pumping enough money, and now the Fed's buying their own paper with their bond issues. So we don't even have to have taxes in the United States anymore. We can keep printing currency, and the Fed can keep buying its own money from printing it from nothing and charging basically nothing to the to the United States government for interest, and which is what it should be doing to start with. But the government should be printing the money. And it's just crazy. I mean, the craziest thing is that this thing's going on, and this Ponzi scheme has gone on so long. But the fact that they've lowered the interest rate so much on what they're charging the government now is a really, really good thing, because what it allows us to do is to defer and kick the can down the road a little bit further, so we don't have a huge financial collapse. Because we've got to nationalize the Federal Reserve. We've got to eliminate, just wipe off the debt, all the money magic that they did, and all the debt they created out of nothing to trillions and trillions of dollars they say we owe them. That needs to go away. Now, all the countries that bought our bonds to finance our debt, we can't do that with those, but we can certainly print the money to pay those back too. And so there's all kinds of things that we can do, and we've got to make all the derivatives illegal, and the whole system's going to have to collapse for a bit for it to come back up and be stronger again. But the reality is that we don't have the heart. We don't have the soul any longer. We don't have the fortitude. We don't have the testosterone because of the BPA and all the things they've done to emasculate men. We don't have the ability to do what we did anymore and to stand in the aggregate. I mean, most people don't care. I mean, most guys nowadays, you call them Joe Six-Pack, right? They look at it with a six-pack and a TV. That's all I need in life. I can sit here and watch my endless hours of talk shows and endless hours of TV sports programming. And they never really leave that. And you ask them who is the pitcher for the Yankees in 1926 in the World Series or whatever. They know exactly who it was in every inning. Are you kidding me? But you ask them about Building 7 on 9/11, they don't even know what you're talking about. You ask them who the first president of the United States was, they don't know who you were talking about. They don't get it anymore. These people have gotten messed up so badly with the indoctrination of the school system, with learned helplessness and all the things that have happened to them. They've lost it. The United States has lost it. We've turned into a country now of just sheeple. I mean, it's sad. It really is sad, Doug. I mean, if everybody understood what it took to get to this country, how we got it here, and why we need to keep it the way that it was, and the blood that was spilled with all these wars, most of them, of course, the Rothschild Bank wars, but the point was we still were willing to go out and fight for this, until we saw what happened with Korea and what happened with Vietnam and what happened with all the rest of them. We've never been we've never been allowed to win another war since then, since World War II.
Well, you're exactly right, but going back in the earlier part of your discussion here in this segment, you were talking about the monetary collapse, and will it be this fall? I just find it really interesting, the Jade Helm 2015 8-week summer special ops exercise. Oh
yeah, me too,
okay.
Buddy. Me too.
July 15th to September 15th, 2015. Involving the Green Beret, the SEALs, and I mean all of the military. 8 weeks of nighttime drills, 7 states, and we know we have reason to believe. I'm sure. Look at the history, as you mentioned earlier, of drills going hot or concurrent with operations that do take place. So here we are. I mean, now what does this tell us? What does Jade Helm 2015 tell us? The timing.
Well, Alex Jones said the other day, if you're going to leave the country, it's that time. That's what he said. Yeah. He said on the show, if you want to leave the United States and you've had enough, it's that time before this drill goes hot. He said it's just that time, but the problem is, where are you going to go, Doug? I mean, I guess the only place that I'd even consider would be New Zealand. I like New Zealand. I've been there. We've talked about that on the air before.
Yeah.
Beautiful place, but there's not a lot to do there. But there's no crime either. If you don't have like a sheep farm or a reindeer farm, you don't have much of anything in New Zealand. But the place is pristine, dog. I mean, it is nice. But the problem is all the globalists are flying to New Zealand, putting in their airstrips, and then now we find out there's that giant volcano that's about to blow on the island of New Zealand. That was on the Extinction Protocol this morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now New Zealand's going to get covered up in lava.
Spoiler. Yeah, I mean, That can ruin your day. Well, but I'm looking at this Jade Helm, and I agree. I mean, if that's what God told you to do, leave the country, fine. But where are you going to go? You're exactly right. I don't believe we're going to outrun what's coming. But when I was looking at the documents for Jade Helm, Texas being listed as hostile, and I looked at that. Did you read those documents, Ted, at all? The Jade Helm documents?
I did not. I only heard what Alex had to say. Now I know that they've included Florida in that, parts of Southern California, Utah, and I forgot there's a couple other states they've also included in there now as being hostile. They're going to be the hot zones, and so but I mean I can honestly see them coming in now, taking over all the state houses, state legislatures, local governments, and all that kind of stuff, and just not leaving. Because then at that point they've already taken over these hot areas, and there's nothing left to try to take over in the event of martial law. They've already done it, and they did it without firing a shot.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean here, this concerns me. This time period and everything that's coming up that Shemitah and Ted, I'll just tell you. The communication broke down in terms of Joe, and so we're going to have Robert. I promise you, we're going to have him on for as long as he wants on an upcoming show this week. I apologize. My apologies.
Good.
There was a communication issue there. I really don't know exactly what it is, but I do know that there's a communication issue. Anyway, having said all of that. This exercise, this 8-week exercise, bothers me immensely because you're right. And why can we do anything to stop this? I mean, we got 8 minutes of the program left. Bottom line here is, can we do anything to stop any of this, including this exercise?
Well, Robert Steele, no, that's why I want to steal on tonight, because he actually had a protocol. He had like an 8-step protocol that we need to do immediately. He's actually put together a whole thing. This guy used to be a former spy. The guy's brilliant, by the way. And he was. I did a show with him this morning, and I said I've got to get you on Hagmann and Hagmann. I'm going to ask Doug and Joe if they'll do that for me, and I also want to get him on with Dave Hodges, because I mean, you guys are kind of like the point of the spear. You, Hodges, Alex Jones, the Power Hour. I mean, there's only 4 or 5 of us that are really, really big. Max Kaiser also, he's another big one.
Oh yeah.
And so and Gerald Salente, but he's mainly a host. I mean, mainly a guest. And so then we got the top guests running around, which would be Steve Quayle, Paul McGuire, Hodges again, you guys. And so that's the thing about it, is that we're all kind of in this thing together, and we're realizing that we're in a downhill slope that just got a bunch of oil thrown on it, and that somebody just elevated the angle on it. And now we're like, this is getting really screwed up really fast. And that's why Steele has an entire protocol that he wants to follow by basically camping out on the lawns of the congressmen and the senators and forcing a change in the aggregate. And he's right. If he can get enough traction on this, he can get it done, because he's a very articulate speaker, and I was very impressed with his knowledge and his skill set. And he knew about the banking community, he knew about the Rothschilds, he knew about the Satanism, he knew about all of it. I mean, his knowledge actually blew me away on the show this morning. In fact, I very rarely do this. I do it with your show, and when you guys are on with me with the Power Hour, I had a difficult time decoupling from the show this morning when I was done at 11. I had to take the kids over for their homeschool stuff, because Harrison, my 15-year-old, is finishing his first year of college now with a 4.0, and I was thinking about the show that I had done for almost an hour after I got off the air, and I don't normally do that. And that's because we were talking about 2 of my favorite subjects, theoretical biophysics and interdimensional souls and transference and all that kind of stuff. That's one of my favorite topics. I just like reading stuff like that. I guess I'm a bit weird about stuff like that. I have a friend of mine. He's an attorney. His name's John Parvin. Great guy. He likes to read things in Latin. And I told him one time, I said, "Dude, that's just weird." Well, people like to, people think that probably what I read is pretty weird too. But see, I don't like mental candy, Joe. I mean, I like reading the Bible. I like reading Scripture. I like reading I like stuff that challenges me. I don't like reading really weird stuff. Like I got a book out the other day. I forgot what it was. It was by Malachi Martin, and I couldn't get through it. In fact, I gave it away. I didn't even want it in the house. It was on demon possessions and how to get people exorcism and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? And it was primarily people that had asked Lucifer or these demons or these whatever they are, these entities, to come into them and possess them perfectly. So it wasn't as if that person wanted those things to leave. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so they were having to force these things out. And I read like the first part of the first exorcism, and I said, you know what? I don't even want to know this crap. I don't even want to know about any of this stuff. I don't even want this stuff in my mind because I got a really good memory. I remember almost everything I read. This morning I was doing that show with Close. You can listen to it if you'd like. It was on the Power Hour, the second hour. And he starts talking about all this stuff. And I said, wait a minute, Doc. I said, that's not what you said in your book. This comment you just made is not in your book. Your book's like 400 pages. I read your book. It's not in your book, is it? He goes, no, you're right. It's not in that book. And I said, I knew it wasn't in the book because I didn't read it. And so I said, that's a very good statement. And he was so funny. I think he was shocked that somebody actually read his book on theoretical biophysics and transdimensional physics and, interdimensional transference and the soul. Remember, we were talking about that last week on your show, remember? And I said, I had the guy coming on. And so I finished reading his book over the weekend, and we talked about all that stuff. It was a great show today. And that's why, I love stuff like that because it makes me realize that this world that we live in, this illusion, this hologram, this vapor that we are, but a mist, like James says, for a bit, we're here and then we're gone. It doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of like a proving ground. It's kind of like being in kindergarten or in high school for your soul. And to prove to God what you are, who you are, and what you're capable of being. I think it's something that God's putting us here for to make us develop into what He wants us to be so that we can commune with Him in the cool of the evening in the garden, which like He did with Adam. I mean, I think that's why He's done this. I think that's why we're in this unique hologram, and there's this huge protection field around the planet with the Van Allen radiation belt and all this stuff that God has put in place to allow us to be here and allow this planet, this world to be here with this holographic existence that we have. And to me, it's really unique how God did this and how He's protected us through these eons of time like He has and allowed us to be here and to become what we need to be through Christ Jesus. I think it's beautiful what He's done for us personally.
Choreographed beautifully. I will
That's
say
right.
that. And thank God for that. And it's great to be alive. It's great to be alive at this time. And I think we should look at this as an opportunity rather than a frightening series of events that we have to get through. And can we get through them? Oh my goodness. Let's look at this as an opportunity. Let's play our positions, uplift one another, and make sure that we're prepared for what's to come. Ted, I want to thank you so much. We're really at the close of our program. Your magnesium topical 5-pack kit. I got to tell you, for what you get, the price is under $100. The positive effects this has. You still have enough of those?
Well, we lowered all the retail prices on the individual products to get it under $100, and that's why we did it in the kit form, because we wanted people to have the entire package to get the full effect of the magnesium transdermal process.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a fabulous product. You still have enough to go around, right? I mean, we're still okay on that?
Well, no, we ran out. We had to order more. We got another batch coming in tomorrow, and so then we got some more coming in on Thursday. But it's at healthmasters.com, and just give us a call. And if you want me to help you, if you guys are a Hagmann Show listener and you're on our program and you got some questions that you want to ask me personally, I give you my word. You tell my staff that you're a Hagmann listener and you need me to call you back personally, I give you my word, I will call you back if you are a customer and you are using our products, because I can't help you if you're buying stuff from Walmart. I can't help you. I can't. Right. I'm just telling you, don't buy stuff from Walmart. It doesn't work. That's all I can say.
I'm waiting on my mail order package of supplements from some Chinese province here. Yeah,
that's right. We got to make sure we got to snake what we're getting. I mean, it's a horrible product. That's right.
Oh my goodness!
But you already saw what happened to your blood sugar and everything else. When you take the right stuff, it works.
Yeah, in the Hagmann Blood Sugar Protocol Special, folks, let me tell you something. If you're a type 2 diabetic, and Ted's right, it's so easy to get your levels in order. And I'll tell you this, for what's coming, you're going to need to be physically... That's right. No, so Ted Broer, Dr. Ted Broer, healthmasters.com, a very good sport tonight. Thanks for sitting in, and thanks for your patience with the communication problems getting cut off, us hanging up on you, whatever, however that works. But thank you. It was entertaining to say the least, but we got some.
Well, I'll be honest with you, it was something different.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know what?
So it's something different.
But anyway, yeah. My brother, thank you. I will be talking to you probably tomorrow. Give me a call tomorrow, and I'll let you know about Mr. Steele, and we'll get him booked.
Yeah, let's get Steele on as quick as we can, because he's a really nice guy. And we kind of got hosed tonight, and that was just not right. We got to take care of him, because I gave him my word to be on now.
Yeah, believe me, one of our it was a little bit embarrassing, and I do have a feeling that I don't even know what was going on with the contact, but having said all, we'll get them on. Ted, thank you so much for sticking with us tonight. God bless, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much. Good night.
All right, brother. Thank you. Folks, that'll do it for us tonight. Tomorrow night, Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford. Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford. I can run my words together better than anyone else. Yeah, Steve Quayle, Pastor David Langford. Tomorrow, don't miss it. It's going to be a critical show. Until tomorrow, stay safe. God bless. Have a great night.